The November 19th meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council will now come to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prior to the start of each City Council meeting, we have an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the City Council on issues related to Eden Prairie City government. Typically, our meetings are held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month, and the open podium period of time is from 6:30 to 6:55 in these chambers. If you wish to speak at open podium, and we had 4 speakers today, please contact the City Manager's office by noon on the meeting date. That number is 949-8412. Leave your name, phone number, and the subject matter you wish to discuss. If time permits after scheduled speakers are finished, or if there are no scheduled speakers, then we have the opportunity for people to spontaneously come in as unscheduled speakers for that event. These portions of the meeting are not recorded or televised, and again, if you have any questions, please contact the City Manager's office. We have 4 proclamations tonight, or 4 items under proclamations and presentations, and the first is a letter of recognition from the Eden Prairie Police Department. Chief Reynolds.
Your Honor, members of the Council, thank you for this time tonight. On several occasions I've come before you and I've said that there's no way that we could do our job as a police department without the help of the people that live here, work here, and pass through Eden Prairie. And tonight I'm honored to come before you and talk about action that these 3 people took that helped us out, and also in helping us out save the life of a person. And we are extra honored tonight, I guess, by having that person with us tonight. She's sitting right here in the front, Sandy Doherty. Also on the call were Officers Moan and Synan here. And Officer Synan actually put in an application and nominated these 3 for the Police Department letter of recognition. That nomination was reviewed, and the award was awarded. So just so you know, a letter of recognition is awarded to an employee or citizen for quality performance which exemplifies excellence in community and service to the community. So the award, which we'll present here in just a minute, is this. It's Eden Prairie Police Department, November 19th, 2013. Letter of recognition to Allison Demi, Ann Kohler, and Michaela Steckley. In the early evening hours of October 4th, a woman collapsed in the parking lot of an Eden Prairie business. Witnesses called 911, and when officers arrived, they found 3 women on the ground with the patient performing CPR. Allison Demi and Ann Kohler were giving chest compressions, while Michaela Steckley was performing respiration breaths. Miss Demi works as an employee at the business and went outside when someone told her a woman had collapsed in the parking lot. Miss Demi had received CPR training and began doing chest compressions by herself until Miss Kohler arrived. Miss Kohler was driving into the parking lot and noticed a woman on the ground and a group of people around her. Miss Kohler is a physician and began assisting with chest compressions. Miss Steckley was in the area and saw that a woman had stopped breathing. Miss Steckley is a lifeguard and keeps a pocket rescue mask in her car. She retrieved the pocket mask from her car and began giving the patient rescue breaths, while Miss Demi and Miss Kohler performed chest compressions. Officers arrived, and the woman was transported by ambulance to the hospital. Today, the woman is recovering and thankful to the women who came to her aid. On behalf of an appreciative and grateful Eden Prairie Police Department, I would like to award this letter of recognition to Allison Demi, Ann Kohler, and Michaela Steckley for the quick action they took to help save the life of a stranger. Rob Reynolds. Thank you.
Very nice and timely coming right before Thanksgiving. I'm sure this woman had a lot to be thankful for, and what a talented team to happen to show up. So thank you for that. We have acceptance of a gift of a historic planter. Mr. Getchell, are you doing that?
Mayor, actually, I believe Mr. Lothammer is covering that.
Okay.
Your Honor, council members, Councilmember Case was in conversation with Travis Wutke recently and discovered the offer of a historic planter. And this is a piece of farm equipment that you'll see Mr. Wutke show some photos of, and talked about gifting it to the city so that it could be used and displayed, and its historical significance could be kept within our city. And so Mr. Wutke is here tonight, and his mother, Mrs. Wutke, is here as well. And Travis will let us know why they look to the city to keep it and give us a little history and background on it.
Thank you, Mr. Lothammer. Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and ladies and gentlemen of our audience, on behalf of the Wutke family, we'd like to take this opportunity to graciously accept your invitation to give this gift, something that's given us such great joy over a greater portion of 3 decades, in fact, more than 3 decades, on our farm in Eden Prairie. And now we'd like to put it on display at its new home at the Cummins Phillips Grill Homestead off of Pioneer Trail for everyone to see. This, I believe, is in your packet. This shows the seed drill itself. In the foreground, little note, in the background is a buck rake, which I have actually had the opportunity, and I don't know if many people would like to say buck rake and opportunity in the same sentence, but it's very labor intensive to operate before we had on our farm more mechanized, mechanical ways to bale our hay. So it's kind of curious to note that both of these things were in use on our farm and came from 2 separate locations, yet they're right next to each other yet again. So my mother and I, as well as my late father, Lauren Reeder Wutke, would like to donate this, something that we have enjoyed for a long period of time. We're delighted that the city is in acceptance of this gift. I don't have any real notes, but I'm just going to go through some pictures and narrative as I talk, and I'll just keep flipping through pictures. So this was a picture taken by city staff, and these pictures are taken by either myself or my mother. This picture here was taken during the course of the conversations. I had reached out to Councilmember Case as well as Mr. Lothammer, and during our discussions, we were in the middle of bringing on equipment for the potential development of the farm, and so we were worried about the future during our discussions of this seed drill and the equipment and the contractors around them. So we went out, and Mother went out and put red, white, and blue bannered, very highly reflective tinsel tape over it, and it signified, "Please save, do not disturb, do not destroy." Save it from the grapples of the excavators. But that's kind of how it sat when I believe Councilmember Case came up to view and take a look at this. And here are the contractors working around it. You can see it right there. They did an excellent job of giving it a wide berth so that nothing would happen to this. So then there was logistics what happened on behalf of Mr. Lothammer when the Parks Department and everyone down at that offices out of the fleet's maintenance shed, and they came up with a plan of coming up and picking this up and transporting it in a safe manner, and so it was secure, this antique implement. And their plan was unique as, by the way, these are never before seen photos of the Parks Department in action. So, so they came up and used a very unique way in which to put this on a trailer. This was a very large piece of equipment, larger than it would be able to trailered conventionally. And this truck right here is actually a tree truck that the parks uses to remove trees that are diseased trees or trees around the parks departments and around the parks of Eden Prairie. And this tree truck, I'll have another one here, was used as a crane in a very careful manner. And I've got another zoom in here of how they actually did this, but they craned it up and loaded it onto this flatbed trailer. And they were hats off, and I'd like to give a fellow employee high five to the entire Parks Department for unconventionally thinking of ways in which to remove this and do it in a safe manner and do it in a manner that kept its antiquity and saved a piece of equipment. This is definitely, I'm really proud that we have such qualified and very highly intellectual and very highly professional employees that the Parks Department and all of city employees. But you can see that they're very, very careful in this. And here's another shot of it with the parks employees in action. So down the road it went off of our farm into the new home of the Cummins Phillips Grill Homestead, and this is as it stands today. And the Parks Department and I believe the Heritage Society and the Historical Society have, unfortunately I did not have a picture of the flowers and the flower bed that was placed inside the planter itself, but I did get an opportunity to pick this out, and someone took great care in picking out a very fall festive colors and in the pumpkins and the gourds and the squash and placing them in there and manicuring this to give it an aesthetic beauty right in front of the Cummins Phillips Grill Homestead. So this is a view in the evening sunset, and it looks better on my copy here than it does on there. And,
Pretty good.
but yeah, this I can't believe that I actually caught this in such a perfect sunset light.
Yeah.
But it shows that the historical nature and the antiqueness of this planter is putting to good use. And my hats off, and I would like to thank again the graciousness of the Parks Department, the Historical Society, and Mr. Case, Councilmember Case, coming out and taking a look and seeing that there is a future that, other than the back of a dump truck.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for this donation, Travis and Norma. Really appreciate it. Do you have any idea how old that implement is?
This one specifically, I'm not sure. I think this was a 12-foot seed drill. I've got some history on it. I didn't want to take too much time in lieu of what could be a lot of other people that want to present something tonight. But the seed drill has been given a historical time of 1701. It was previous to that in other forms, but the engineering during the agricultural revolution really took hold in 1701 when Jethro Tull invented a multi-row seed drill. So that it's a little bit of information. I've got more, and I can definitely share that with the Historical Society if they would like to put some sort of plaque or narrative in front of there for other people to kind of figure out what it is, because there might be a lot of people wondering what is that. So
Yeah, right. Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Is there a motion to accept the gift?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Again, thank you, Travis.
thank you.
We have the state fire marshal here with us today, Jerry Rosendahl, and he's on hand to present an award. And he's joined, I believe, by our fire chief, George Espenson.
Your Honor and council members, it's my pleasure to introduce State Fire Marshal Jerry Rosendahl and also Eden Prairie Fire Station 3 Captain Becky White, who also works at the State Fire Marshal's office in the public education area. And the Fire Marshal is here to present a recognition for the city and for the fire department.
Mayor and council, thanks for the few minutes to congratulate you and the Eden Prairie Fire Department on achieving a Life Safety Achievement Award. I'll read just a couple things from the press release. The National Association of State Fire Marshals and Grinnell Mutual Reinsurance Company are pleased to announce that 117 fire departments from across the country have earned the Life Safety Achievement Award for their fire prevention accomplishments in 2012. This is 117 across the entire country, and we had 17 of those in Minnesota, which was the highest number of any state in the country. So we're extremely proud of that, and that's why I told George that Becky should come forward, since she is our State Fire Marshal Division Fire and Life Safety Educator, coordinates these programs across the state. So we're very pleased that Eden Prairie allows us to share her time on a Monday through Friday basis, so we thank her for that. Just a little brief on the award. To qualify for the award, fire departments must record 0 fire deaths in residential structures. In addition, they must demonstrate commitment to prevent residential fires in their local communities through active and effective fire prevention programs. The applicants also must present evidence by some measure that the department's fire prevention efforts increased over the previous year and made a positive impact. And while funding for fire suppression efforts, this ties in with the City Council certainly, while funding for fire suppression efforts will always be necessary, spending money and time preventing a fire or significantly reducing its impact is preferable to having to respond after a fire has occurred. Our Life Safety Achievement Award recipients recognize that and fight for more fire prevention resources every chance they get. So it's my pleasure to, Mayor, would you come down?
Sure.
My pleasure to present this Life Safety Achievement Award to the Mayor and the Fire Chief, George Espenson. This actually is for the year 2012 for your outstanding efforts on behalf of fire and life safety. However you want to do this.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
They're standing. It's very talented.
Thank you.
And just briefly before you leave, I understand that in a few days you are going to be retiring.
7 working days.
Yeah, after 10 years as State Fire Marshal. So I want to thank you for that service and also for your total of 40-some years of service in fire safety and fire prevention. I'm sure that the whole state has benefited from your leadership, and I'm sure that George has too. So thank you.
I taught him a couple things. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and I left my glasses at the end of the table. Okay. The next item we have is a presentation from the Southwest LRT Community Works quarter-wide housing strategy. It's an update from Kathy Bennett of ULI, Urban Land Institute. And Carrie, are you also going to be speaking? Okay. Okay, we've got Carrie Pierce. Is it Roosh? Okay, from Hennepin County that's working on the project also.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to be able to provide you with an update on the quarter-wide housing strategy for Southwest Community Works. Carrie Pierce-Rue is here with us tonight as well from Hennepin County, and I do also want to recognize Molly from your staff who has participated in this process. You may wonder why ULI Minnesota is part of this, so I just thought it would be valuable to give you a little bit of background on our involvement. For those who may not know, ULI Minnesota is a nonprofit organization. We actively engage the public and the private sector leaders to foster collaboration, share knowledge, and join in meaningful strategic action to create thriving, sustainable communities. ULI supports the Regional Council of Mayors group, of which Mayor Tyra Lukens has been a very active participant in. We were asked to provide technical assistance to Southwest Community Work to use our knowledge with our ability to have a cross-section of both the private and public sector. and also the benefit of our national and international organization to bring best practices to the Southwest Community Works group that specifically is looking at the integration of the land use and the transportation planning for the LRT. With that, Hennepin County supports this work financially as well as through their Community Works program, of which they have a Community Works program on many different places in Hennepin County. Midtown Greenway is another Community Works project. Botno LRT line as well, I believe, is now a Community Works project. So Southwest Corridor, which started in 2009, and I'll give you a little bit of background on that as well, is also a Community Works program. So the 4 things I'm specifically going to talk about tonight, just a little bit of background on Southwest Community Works, why a housing strategy is important. I'm mostly going to spend time just providing some key points from the completed housing inventory. It's a very dense report that you can certainly download and look in more detail and use for your other planning purposes as well. And then entertain any questions and talk about next steps as part of this process. First, Southwest Community Works. Again, it was created in 2009. It's really a collaborative effort which includes all the cities along the Southwest Corridor, the Watershed District, the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board, Southwest Transit, Hennepin County, and ULI Minnesota is part of that organization as well. As part of your packet described, the Southwest Community Works has kind of a structure to it. It has a steering committee of which Kathy Nelson from your council participates, and Brad Aho as well as an alternate. In a steering committee, many members of your staff spend a lot of time with the Technical Implementation Committee, and the steering committee assigned a housing work group of which your staff also participates, Molly, in that, specifically around this corridor housing strategy and the exploration of a corridor housing strategy. So why is a corridor housing strategy important? There really is 3 key reasons the Southwest Community Works believes it's important. One, which is more local, to maximize the benefits to the community of this light rail investment, and also to look at things from a corridor-wide perspective. I've heard some planners and some developers describe the Southwest Corridor as a string of pearls, that it's not as successful if you just have one pearl. Rather, it's more successful if you have a string of pearls and each different pearl kind of fits together as one string rather than individually. So that's one of the key benefits of looking at this on a corridor wide. Also, it's important to the Southwest Community Works vision and guiding principles, and it's critical in being competitive for federal funding as part of getting that federal funding for this LRT line. So quickly, Southwest Community Works, this is their vision, and as part of one of their principles, it's very important for them to provide a full range of housing choices to position the Southwest LRT communities as a place for all to live. Why is it important for the federal new starts? FTA has changed their criteria, and they're very interested in a mix of housing options for both the existing residents and future residents. For the first time in their criteria, they're looking at specifically affordable housing to be included in their land use score calculation and measure. And the Southwest Transit, the project office, will be submitting a new starts application for Southwest Corridor in May of June of this year. So this is very timely that Southwest Community Works is doing this. So quickly, with regards to the corridor-wide process, housing strategy process, first is this inventory, and this is the work that's completed and really the reason that we wanted to come out and talk with you today, so that you have the benefit of all of this information as well. We'll also be engaging in a gap analysis and incorporating some market feasibility within that gap analysis. We're looking at housing and development opportunities along the corridor, and this really is informed by a process called the TSAP, Transitional Station Area Planning, which looks at connections to the different station areas out into the neighborhoods and possible opportunities for development in those areas. We're going to be looking for ways to collaborate on strategies all across the corridor, as well as look at the opportunities for targeted policies and programs at all the individual cities and within Hennepin County. So we're really at the infancy stage of this process. The housing inventory was funded through a grant from the HUD Sustainability funding pool through their local implementation capacity grants. In addition, there was some resources from Hennepin County that helped to fund this work. It was very exhaustive and extensive data gathering, demographics, employment. We thought it was important to include school data, the for sale market, multifamily rental, and collection of housing programs from all the different communities and the financial resources. It focused on the 17 station areas along the corridor, analyzed together and individually. The data looked at the half a mile, 1 mile, and 2 mile. This really looked at the LPA alignment, but looking out to the 2 mile, we believe we're able to still have good data if some of those alignments changed. Eden Prairie has 5 stations in this analysis. So I'm going to run through these pretty quickly because I don't want to take up too much time, and I'd like to entertain questions if we have time. But I do want to highlight the blue areas are the specific Eden Prairie data at the station areas at the half mile boundary at the different stations. I just coded your station areas. So CW is City West, Golden Triangle, Southwest, Town Center, and Mitchell. So that's what those individual codes mean, just so I can get everything on the slide. But overall, the corridor accounts for 4% of Hennepin County's population. There's really a younger demographic along this corridor, which is a benefit because the younger demographic is a higher transit preferred demographic. So if there's an LRT coming and you have a younger demographic, that's a benefit. You can see how all of your different station areas rank within that, the overall for the corridor. At Town Center and Southwest, 66%, so that's the highest overall younger demographic in the Eden Prairie station areas. Also, we looked at population density. Not surprising, the density reduces as you move out into the suburban areas. We looked at the population characters with regards to ethnicity, and 27% corridor wide is non-white. At the Town Center site, 50% is non-white in that half mile radius. Generally, there's smaller household sizes. There's average of 1.83 corridor wide. In Eden Prairie, Golden Valley has the highest household sizes of the corridor. There's a higher percentage of rent overall for the corridor compared to the metro area and the Hennepin County overall. 80% of the Town Center Southwest is rental, compared with 54% of all the households for the corridor overall. Then we also looked at corridor median income, and you can see that Eden Prairie has a little bit on the average as well as a little bit higher than the average for the corridor overall. So one of the key takeaways I get from this data set is that there is a younger demographics that are attracted to Southwest and to LRT. So that is a benefit for your community. And what kind of housing does that younger demographic desire and desire to live in along the corridor? The gap analysis is set to try to answer that question. We looked at employment along the corridor. And realistically, this is a job-rich area. 13% of all Hennepin County employment is along the corridor. That's 7% of the metro area. 14% of the corridor jobs are those professional, scientific, technical jobs that are projected to grow. And there's a higher wage and educational attainment in this corridor. Also, City West has a significant amount of jobs along the corridor. There's fewer jobs near Penn, 21st Station, and Eden Prairie. Southwest has the fewest jobs. But one of the data points that I think is most interesting, that of the workers within a half mile of the station areas in Eden Prairie, nearly 10% live in Eden Prairie, but 24% live on the corridor. So this is the benefit of looking at this corridor wide. So those workers will have the benefit of living and working all along the corridor. So key takeaway, it's a job-rich corridor. I think you know that more than anyone. What kind of housing do current and future workers choose or need? And gap analysis will try to address that. We thought it was really important to look at the schools along the corridor, particularly related to the potential ability to be able to walk to school if you or take the light rail and then walk to school if it's close enough and it's safe enough. Overall, there's 28 private schools, 7,900 students. There's several schools. There's a total of 21 schools along the corridor that are within a half a mile of the station, which is considered to be a walkable distance as long as there's not barriers within that distance. There is in Eden Prairie, Eagle Ridge Academy and Montessori Learning are both within the half-mile radius of a station area. So are there opportunities to attract new student populations to the corridor due to this new accessibility? There is a possibility there. We spent a fair amount of time looking at rental housing. It has been estimated from national best practices that occupants of rental housing are more likely to ride LRT. And along the corridor, there is quite a bit of rental housing. 80% are general occupancy market rate units. Nearly 12% are subsidized affordable, and 8% are senior. Minneapolis realistically accounts for the majority of all of these rental units, and approximately 4,500 units in Minneapolis are closer to other LRT stations aside from Southwest. So that really kind of shows the importance of the LRT system and access to the system. Eden Prairie accounts for about nearly 15% of all the rental units along the corridor. We thought it was also important to look at the proximity of these rental units to the station areas. And as you can see, there are some units, about 12%, that are within a quarter mile of the proposed station areas. But there are only 5 stations that have rental housing within a quarter mile of the station. And in Eden Prairie Town Center, that is one of the areas that is within a quarter mile of rental housing. However, 6 stations have no rental housing within a half a mile, and this could be an area of opportunity as development plans are proposed related to the light rail. So overall, there's limited rental housing options within a quarter mile. Are there ways to improve connections to existing housing? The Transitional Station Area Action Plan is looking at that and making recommendations, and have actually provided some recommendations that informed the engineering of the line, so that was helpful. And then what kind of housing is needed and where to provide more choice along the corridor, proximity to the stations. We also thought it was important to look at the affordability, not only because the FTA is very interested in this as part of the New Starts, but because it's an important component of providing a full range of housing choices in your community and all the communities. So quarter-wide, based upon income, 34% of households have an income under $35,000. annually. 13% is at City West and Golden Triangle, and 31% of the households have an income under this $35K at Town Center and Southwest. One of the things we thought was really important to look at in this study is what we refer to as this natural occurring affordable housing, and that is the market rate housing that has rents that are at a level that's affordable to people at these lower incomes. Now, it may not mean that people at these lower incomes are occupying these units, but it just means that it potentially is available, and that may be the housing stock that you have an interest in preserving, because as light rail comes in, there is the likelihood that the market forces will potentially drive up the rents in the area. So 71% of projects, 53% of all units were built before 1980 that are this natural occurring. In Eden Prairie, because you were more of a developing community, you have less of this housing stock that is older than 1980. One of the things that Hennepin County did is they took this data and they mapped it at the different income levels, and they also added what we refer to as a walk shed. That's the yellow boundary, meaning that, yes, the circle's at a quarter mile and a half mile, but really can you get from point A to B within that radius? And the walk shed is where it kind of is able to highlight, do you need a better connection, or do you need to provide maybe sidewalks to be able to get connections to these different housing units and the station. So I'll just run through these at each of the stations. And City West has one of these natural occurring affordable housing complexes with a mix of rents affordable at 60 and 80% of the area median income. At Golden Triangle Station, Bluffs at 9 Mile Creek has a mix of subsidized and market rate housing. And you can see it's just within that 10-minute walk shed, so there may be opportunities to look at improving that access to that complex. Eden Prairie Town Center Station has a mix of subsidized and natural occurring affordable housing, and you can see there at various income levels with several different complexes. Some within the walk shed and some without. Southwest Station, there really are no units within the walk shed or the 1 mile radius, and there are some condos right next to the station, and this really was mapping rental housing. So keep that in mind as well, that there could be within those condos some rental units, some of the units that are rented, but this study did not specifically look at that. That may be an area, the gap analysis, that they might drill down a little further. And Mitchell, again, there's only one property that is just within the 1 mile radius that has units affordable at 50% of the area median income. For your benefit, we did provide the breakdown of the income at the different income levels within your packet as well. So the key takeaway here is there's a large supply of this natural occurring affordable housing. Much of it tends to be older. Are there ways to preserve and maintain the existing housing stock? The work group is going to be looking at drilling down and looking at some strategies, and also the gap analysis will be recommending and looking at different options and opportunities. Also, what tools are available to cities, to the county, and to the region to enhance and preserve this housing as the light rail comes into the area. Just quickly, I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. The study also did look at the development pipeline of things that are on the dock to be built and or are built. Only about 20% of those projects that are in the pipeline are within the half mile of the stations. 80% of those units are within Minneapolis. Other key data points, there's low vacancy rates across the corridor. We did look at the condos across the corridor. The majority are within Minneapolis. We also looked at the single family in that radius, and that information is detailed more in the report. So This review of the city's city plans and policies, there is an opportunity there to potentially collaborate. Each one of the cities and the county, they have various different levels of programs, various different financial tools that they use, various different policies that they support. And through this process, there may be a way to collaborate so that 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 communities are much stronger in addressing the need of a full range of housing choices together rather than individually. And the gap analysis will look at that as well. The next step is something I've been mentioning, is this gap analysis, and really that's trying to answer many of these questions. There is a process that we're going through to look at this gap analysis. We do have RFPs that have been submitted. We're in the process through the housing work group. We're reviewing the RFPs, and we hope to have consultants selected by the end of the year, if not at the beginning of the year in January, and then hope to have the process completed in the first and second quarter of 2014. Through that process, we anticipate that we would like to come back to the cities and give a report and gain input on some of the findings of the gap analysis as we go along. So we hope that we'll be able to do that sometime in the first or second quarter of next year as well. And with that, I will entertain questions, comments.
Thank you. Questions? I have a couple questions. With the New Starts program, have they really clearly elucidated their goals for housing along the corridor? Because I'm wondering what kind of credence they're giving to maintenance of existable affordable housing.
There's 2 components of the New Starts criteria. There's just the numbers that really we don't have a lot of control over because they specifically are looking at those deed restricted affordable housing, and that goes into the number for the corridor, and it's compared to the county, and you get a score. And then there's another area called within the land use criteria that we are able to more talk about all the different tools and policies that the cities have in place, the maintenance work, this corridor housing strategy, and all the different natural occurring affordable housing, and then that helps to increase the land use component of the New Starts application. So there's kind of the data piece, and then there's the different collaborative pieces as well that go into that application.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, I've heard the statement made before about looking at collaborations between communities on housing strategies. Could you give some concrete examples of your statement about pearls on a necklace? I mean, because certainly there are transit corridors that exist currently all around the Twin Cities, 494, 212, all sorts of transportation corridors, and we've gotten along pretty fine without having collaborative housing strategies with St. Louis Park and Edina and Minnetonka. So what is unique, if you can kind of give me some idea about what's unique about transit that makes collaboration along the corridor essential?
Well, transit is a very fixed
like a highway
transportation method of transportation. It's very fixed. So, and it's costly, different than bus lines, et cetera. And the bus lines are important to feed into it. So with that fixed transit, development tends to occur around those areas because they see that that's 100 years of certainty. And so it lowers a development's risk with regards to building around the benefit of that transit corridor. So what we've seen in other regions is the transit corridors tend to, specifically with housing, tend to increase that market at a rapid rate as the development comes in. So looking at this from a corridor perspective and identifying strategic areas where maybe housing makes sense, or within the different station areas, or where there's jobs in one area and housing can be in another area, there's a benefit of that fixed guideline for someone to get from one location to another. But specifically, Mayor, with regards to your comment about why look at some corridor housing strategies, there is benefit in collaboration. The FTA looks at benefit in collaboration, but that is not the only reason to do that. Certainly, it's an important component. The other is because there is an array of different housing along the corridor, and looking at it from the ability from someone to get from their house to work. Eden Prairie is very job rich. Minnetonka is very job rich. The new younger generation may desire to live in Minneapolis. How can they most efficiently get to work? They prefer sometimes to ride transit and not drive. And so looking at this together benefits your community with being able to attract workers for your employees, but also benefits your residents with their ability to get to jobs in Minneapolis. So it's kind of looking at this instead of just individually looking at it together. Financing-wise, collaboration can help to attract some funding resources to preserve some of your existing housing stock. Certainly, Eden Prairie may have some good tools to use on their own, and they do. But if there's opportunities to access some funding with others that provides more bang for your buck, then that is maybe a good reason to look at collaborating as well. So those are just some general comments. Part of this work is to really look at some strategies that all the communities could agree on, and ultimately each individual community may decide that they have some stronger resources that they want to apply in their own community that maybe another community doesn't have the ability to provide or the need to provide. So that's still going to be an option. If you looked at the graphic, I think there's going to be some corridor things you can do together, and then individually the cities are going to be able to do something on their own as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Aho.
I just have a couple of questions, comments. So once the study is completed and you've gathered all the data and you've come up with a gap analysis and you have some recommendations, how are you recommending that the city of Eden Prairie, for example, take advantage of that information, and what can we really do about it? I mean, looking at our land use, we're about 98, 99%, already developed, and so there's really not a lot of, new development room to take place. It would have to be pretty much redevelopment efforts. And secondly, are there going to be any requirements as this information is put forward, or is it more just for general information?
So this work is through Southwest Community Works. Members of your council sit on that process. Yep. They don't have any authority to be able to make any requirements. Yep. So how you can take this information, and what we hope as part of being part of Community Works, is that we can come back and get input as some of those suggested recommendations come forward. And you can take action to participate, find benefit in doing so, or not. You already are doing some things, rezoning for higher density around the transit station. Those are great steps to anticipate looking at new options and opportunities for housing in those station areas, and that each city is doing those kind of things individually within their community, and that is certainly goes into all of this work and collection of information. So you should be commended for some of those things that you're doing now. And this might just be putting a finer point to some of that. It may be coming up with some new bright ideas that might be valuable for you as a community to participate in, for the benefit of your residents here currently and the benefit of maximizing that LRT investment for your city as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming.
Yes.
Oh. No, this is not a public hearing. Could you?
Well, I can
I noticed you used the term fixed.
Sir, this is not a public hearing. This is not this is a workshop for the council presentation. You can talk to Ms. Bennett outside the council chambers after she leaves. Thank you.
You did ask for any.
There's, well, she was asking us. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda and other items of business?
Move approval.
Second.
Any items to add or delete? I would like to add something under report of council members. All in favor of the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from the council workshop held Tuesday, October 15th?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any corrections to those? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval of the city council meeting minutes held that same date?
Move approval.
Second.
Any corrections to those? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Thank you. Consent calendars, or a motion for approval of items A through I.
Move approval.
Second.
Any items to pull for discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. This brings us to our first public hearing, which is the Fairway Woods 2 Condo Homeowners Association Housing Improvement Area. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You may recall from a council meeting in October, you held a public hearing for the establishment of our first ever housing improvement area in Eden Prairie. And in this case, that's the Fairway Woods Condo Homeowners Association. Following that public hearing, we stated that we would be back at a future council meeting for the actual first reading of an ordinance adopting a resolution and enacting this housing improvement area at Fairway Woods. And with that public hearing and with this meeting, owners were notified by mail and legal notice of not only the hearing, but the estimated costs of the improvements, the assessments against each unit, and all the other compliance requirements that come with this program. And really, in a nutshell, this follows state legislation which allows the city to create a housing improvement area where a townhome or condo association can undertake improvements to many of the common areas of their buildings. In this case, there's a lot of work with garages and roofs and even pavement rehabilitation, and then have those costs assessed to all of the individual homeowners. And again, there's an interest cost with that. So it's basically a special assessment that you're very familiar with. But it allows the homeowners association to undertake those improvements in advance and then be assessed, because sometimes finances are an issue and the housing stock is aging. So we've been talking for a few years about setting up this program. Many of our neighboring cities undertake such a program. And I believe in the case of Fairway Woods, they have to present a petition to be in the association, and it's our understanding that 100% of the homeowners wanted to participate and be a part of the improvement. And even though the law doesn't state you need 100% approval, I believe that's the case here. So the action tonight is now to hold, actually I guess it would be to hold another public hearing on the ordinance, and then to enact the ordinance for first reading.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Getchell? And so there's no net cost to the city with this project, because the interest costs on the money are added.
That is correct,
to the
Mayor.
assessment.
That is
Okay.
correct. The city would not be putting in any money or subsidizing the project other than allowing the assessment to occur with interest.
Yes, Mr. Ahmed.
One just quick question on that. So basically, for the benefit of everyone listening, there is no cost to the city, but the reason the city gets involved as opposed to the association just going to financial institutions and seeking a loan to do this is that they've already tried to do that or don't have the ability to do that. Is that correct?
That's another good question. That's correct. We're another mechanism for that may not be able to occur through another financial institution.
Right.
That's a good question.
All right, thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this issue?
Seeing none, I move to close the public hearing and approve the first reading of an ordinance establishing the Fairway Woods 2 Condominium Association Housing Improvement Area pursuant to Minnesota statutes 428A.11 to 428A.21, and adopt the resolution approving the housing improvement fee for the Fairway Woods 2 Condominium Association Housing Improvement Area pursuant to Minnesota statutes 428A.11 to 428A.21.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Rosso, you look like you want to say something.
I do. I was conferring with the city manager, so I'm sure that the motion was read as it is in the agenda.
Okay.
And what I'd like to suggest, because these are coordinated actions, and we really need a first and second reading of the ordinance so that the ordinance is effective at the same time as the resolution is effective. So I'd like to suggest that, and we've done first and second readings at the same time. So unless we need...
We need a unanimous vote, don't we? And does that count with only 4 of us here?
Well, that's what as I was saying that, I was just thinking about that. We need a unanimous vote, and I don't know if I have to look to see if that says a unanimous vote
Of those in attendance.
Of those in attendance or of the entire council.
And I think our thought process is we were going to have 2 readings. We were going to come back for a second reading on December 2nd. So my feeling was that I'm okay with leaving out that third bullet, and we can bring back that third bullet with second reading, as the city attorney mentioned, because we had not planned on doing a first and second reading tonight. But as he said, you could if it was a unanimous vote of the council.
Is there any reason to hustle it along?
Unless Molly's here and she can answer questions, I think they know that this will not be approved until after the second reading. So I don't see why not adopting the resolution would create any problems, because they're still going to be waiting for second reading anyway.
Okay.
That would be fine. It does say unanimous vote of the council, so.
Okay.
So we could take the first and the second tonight.
No, the first.
You would put them both off.
I would do the first reading of the ordinance,
Minus
close the
third.
public hearing, do the first reading of the ordinance,
Minus the
and
third
save the
language.
adoption of the resolution until the second reading of the ordinance, so that the ordinance is
Got it.
effective at the same time the resolution is.
So we need to withdraw the original motion. Did you second it, Brad? You approve that?
I approve.
Sure,
yes.
you're okay with withdrawing the motion? Okay, do you want to make a new motion then? Or do we need to take a vote on that, Mr. Rosso?
No, it's been withdrawn, so you
Okay.
don't need a vote.
Do you want to make the new motion?
Sure. I move to close the public hearing and approve the first reading of an ordinance establishing the Fairway Woods 2 Condominium Association Housing Improvement Area pursuant to Minnesota statutes 428A.11 to 428A.21.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That brings us to the Noterman property. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. We have before us tonight a request for a comprehensive guide plan change from rural residential to neighborhood commercial on 1.07 acres, and an amendment to expand the MUSA boundary to include 11.5 acres, and a planned unit development concept review on the 11.5 acres at 16180 Flying Cloud Drive. So this would be the Lions Tap property and the property to the north, the rural residential property to the north. We have the project proponent tonight who will provide an overview of the project. We also have our city planner that would like to provide us a little bit of an update in the history on issues related to MUSA boundaries and some of our previous discussion related to this property in this area. I do want to say that as it relates to this project, or what's before you tonight, the Plan Commission voted to recommend approval of the project 6-1 at their October 14th City Council meeting. So again, before the public hearing, we have Mr. Shardlow here representing this applicant, and then Mr. Franzen. We're open for any questions you would have, and then we have a public hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Shardlow?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm John Shardlow. I'm a planning consultant with Stantec. Also with me tonight are Bert and Bonnie Noterman, who are the owners of the property. I'd also like to introduce Mr. Seaver Peterson, who owns the property to the east of Spring Road, whose property is also affected by this. I recognize you have a long agenda, and I've attended thousands of public hearings, and so I will be succinct in my comments. This is, as City Manager indicated, an application for a comprehensive plan amendment and a concept plan approval for the PUD. It would be a land use change of just a small portion of the Noterman property, just over 1 acre of land that is currently guided rural residential. It would be changed to neighborhood commercial. And it would be the expansion of the MUSA line to include all of the Noterman property so that sanitary sewer and public utilities could be extended to the Lions Tap and would eventually be available for residential development on the property that they own as well. So the zoning, if you will, we're certainly not requesting an approval of zoning because it'd just be the concept plan, but it would be for the commercial portion of the property only. There was some confusion about that at the Planning Commission, so I wanted to make sure that I made that point. It really would be related only to the Lions Tap parking lot. There is no residential rezoning requested as part of this application. That is not included in the planned unit development. Again, very quickly for background, there's been some form of commercial establishment on the Lions Tap property since the 1930s. The Notermans have owned the property since 1977. And it was about 15 years ago when there was the last significant major renovation of the property in 1985. The Notermans have been working closely with Mr. Franzen and his predecessors with the city and talking about how to get access to the property and how to eventually get municipal utilities to serve the property for a very long time. My former company, Dahlgren, Chardlow, and Euban, did the planning for the Charleston property development, and I know that the issue of was it potentially possible to provide access to the Noterman property was discussed at that time. It was essentially concluded that it wasn't possible to do it from that location, which ultimately led the city staff to conclude that the best way to access the residential portion of the Noterman property when it eventually develops would be off of Eden Prairie Road. The other thing that has taken some time since we have been working with city staff and the Hennepin County Highway Department has been the issue of the lift station, the sanitary sewer lift station that's on Spring Road. And the city retained a consultant, I believe it was SRF, to do the determination, the analysis to make sure that there was sufficient capacity in that lift station to service the sanitary sewer that would be generated from the subject property. That report has been finalized and there is sufficient capacity. They confirmed that the service of to accommodate the Lions Tap was taken into account when that was designed initially. So again, this is a graphic that shows an aerial photo. The red lines delineate the existing Lions Tap property, which is 1.6 acres, located right here. And then the rest of it outlines the rest of the property owned by the Notermans, which is an additional 9.9 acres. Just again to orient the council and the audience, Flying Cloud Drive is in this location, Spring Road is here, the Peterson property is across the street, located right here. I have been a consultant to the Notermans on a number of different properties that they own for many years. And when they were notified by Hennepin County Transportation Department that the county was going to update the Flying Cloud Road, they contacted me. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to recognize that there's an existing driveway curb cut onto Flying Cloud Road located in this location, which provides access to some parking spaces that are really very, very much needed for the Lions Tap. So when we looked at it and talked about it, the first thought, frankly, was that this was going to be a significant damage to the business because they're very challenged in terms of parking. But as I looked at it, it seemed to me that if you're going to be upgrading Flying Cloud Drive, this would be the time to deal with that angled intersection with Spring Road. And so we did some initial drawings that would show how that could be brought to more nearly perpendicular angle. Met with Mr. Franzen and Mr. Rue, the city engineer, and discussed it, and then started to have some conversations with Hennepin County Transportation Department as well. and I'm pleased to say that there was general support for the idea by all involved. So again, you can see that the angle of the intersection right now is about 70 degrees, which is difficult from a sight distance standpoint. It's an unsafe intersection, and if you're going to be upgrading the Flying Cloud Drive, it's going to be accommodating more traffic in the future, so we think it makes sense to improve the safety of that intersection. So what you see in this drawing is a realignment, a proposed realignment for Spring Road. It is in the preliminary design stages at Hennepin County. And one of the reasons why we were not able to come forward tonight with an actual site plan and concept approval for the PUD is because that line, if you will, that right-of-way line or new right-of-way line won't be finalized until that project gets further on in the design process. So what this would result in is by moving the road from this location over here, it would create almost 7/10 of an acre of surplus right-of-way. So what my clients were prepared to do in talking to Hennepin County is to purchase that right-of-way, that surplus right-of-way from Hennepin County, and make it available to expand the parking lot on the same side of Spring Road as the restaurant. You'll notice also that the county already owns pretty significant right-of-way in this location where the existing pond is, but it would require 0.35 acres of land here to be acquired from Seaver Peterson. We've worked very closely with Mr. Peterson throughout this process, and even though he is one of the property owners who would actually lose some land as a result of this, he recognizes the benefits and supports the application that's before you. The other thing that's important to note is that the land that is part of the land that's part of this application, that area in green, is currently owned by Hennepin County. And Hennepin County has submitted a letter to the city indicating their support for this process as well. And finally, there's a little tiny sliver located right here, which is actually owned by Seaver Peterson, that would be part of the land that would be re-guided for neighborhood commercial. And Mr. Peterson has submitted a letter indicating his support for that application as well. Part of the application, as you know, in order to be able to provide the property with sanitary sewer, it first needs to be within the Metropolitan Urban Service Area boundary. Some of those drawings are a little fuzzy in terms of the lines, but this is taken from your existing comprehensive plan on the left, which shows the existing MUSA line, and the Noterman property is delineated in white. What we are proposing to do is to bring the entire Noterman property within the MUSA, so this the drawing on the right side would be the proposed MUSA line if you support the recommendation from your staff and Planning Commission to approve our application. So this is a drawing which shows what would be the resulting comprehensive guide plan land use designations if our application was approved. So you see the existing neighborhood commercial within the red lines I showed you previously. In order to make the revised design for the parking lot work, there's a couple of additional triangles that would be taken from the Noterman's rural residential parcel, and I'll show you that design in a minute. So the application for the comprehensive plan amendment in terms of land use is this triangular portion of property which is currently road right-of-way, which would be converted to neighborhood commercial, and then these two small triangles of land which are currently guided rural residential, which would be redesignated to neighborhood commercial. Very important to note that we're not requesting a re-guiding for the residential portion of the property at this time. It's still rural residential. It's just shy of 10 acres of land, which means it basically would accommodate or could accommodate one house at this point. So this is just a closer look at that, and again, I'm happy to come back and answer questions if you have them, but in the interest of time, I'll just move forward. So again, one of the important issues, and one of the issues that was of some interest to the surrounding property owners, is where would sanitary sewer come from to serve the subject property. Again, just to orient everybody, north is up, Flying Cloud Drive on the bottom of the drawing, and Spring Road as it goes up and crosses Riley Creek. There's an existing sewer at the Riley Creek crossing, and the lift station is located there. And so what would happen is that there would be a 4-inch force main that would be extended from the existing lift station down, paralleling Spring Road, and obviously it would parallel the new alignment of Spring Road, down to a lift station that would be located somewhere in this vicinity. Again, there was some concern before that from some of the property owners over here that utility would come from Eden Prairie Road, and it's not. That's not the proposal. So again, the point here is this lift station is sized, does have capacity to serve the subject property, and this is the approximate alignment of that sewer line. So again, we are not in a position to come forward with detailed construction drawings. We won't be until Hennepin County has the alignment finalized. But generally speaking, what we would do is expand the parking lot from the Lions Tap on the area that's on the same side of Spring Road. If you've frequented the Lions Tap, you know that it's a very busy establishment, and lots of times employees and patrons need to walk across Spring Road, which certainly isn't a safe condition today, but would be only less safe in the future. There would be an opportunity to improve access to the building, improve some of the functional characteristics of the building in terms of trash handling and servicing. But importantly, this curb cut would be eliminated. And it would be eliminated cooperatively with Hennepin County. Hennepin County doesn't have to condemn it from the Nodermans. We don't have to endure a controversial or a contentious condemnation. The Nodermans would agree voluntarily to give up that curb cut, and in exchange they would agree to pay fair market value for the surplus right-of-way to add it to the Lions Tap property. So generally speaking, what would happen is that there would be some excavation on the northern portion of the property, and that fill would be used to raise the area which currently enters at a lower level down adjacent to Flying Cloud Drive. And that area would be then a continuous, very simple, straightforward parking arrangement with perpendicular parking. Importantly, 76 existing parking spaces. There would be 121 with this expansion for an addition of 45 additional parking spaces. There were some letters from neighboring property owners that were included in your packet. Let me just very briefly mention those. One of those was concerned, a couple of them, about the expansion of the Musa line. There was concern about river bluff protection. Also some concern about the retaining walls and the construction on the Lions Tap property and the fact that that could interfere with wildlife corridors and crossings of Flying Cloud Drive. And then concerns about enforceability of a future PUD. The things we wanted to just say quickly in response is that it's important that everybody recognizes that the Noderman property is developable, and it has all of the rights of any other property that's zoned rural residential, no more, no less, so subject to all of the applicable codes and ordinances. And again, we're not here requesting a rezoning. We're not here requesting a re-guiding. That would be subject to a future application. And as I'm sure the city attorney or Mr. Franzen can concur, you have all of the control. You have a great deal of discretion whether you approve a change in the land use designation to a higher density residential at some point in the future. But again, that's not our application here before you today. If you were to approve the application today, the only thing that it would mean is if there were development that occurred on the residential property, it could be connected to sanitary sewer. It does not increase the density. The Metropolitan Urban Service line is a regional growth management policy that's intended to ensure efficient, orderly expansion of the region's sanitary sewer area. And frankly, at this point, sanitary sewer has gone way beyond the city of Eden Prairie to Chaska and Chanhassen and Shakopee. So whereas it's not an insignificant issue, it's an important issue, it certainly is a local issue. I've spoken with the sector representative from the Metropolitan Council, and they don't consider it to be an issue of regional significance. It's certainly an issue that this council can and should decide. There was some information included in letters from some of the concerned citizens about bluff protection and some thoughts that the city had bluff protection ordinances. In the city of Eden Prairie, the term bluff is only found in your shoreland ordinance, and that is the area which is within 300 feet of a lake, river, or stream. The Noderman property is not within a shoreland district, and so the protection that's built into your ordinance is the protection that's built into section 11.60, which is steep slopes. Again, there's no development proposed for that portion of the site this evening. We believe that the small expansion of the Lions Tap parking lot isn't going to have any significant impact on wildlife corridors. The proposed improvements to Flying Cloud Drive would certainly effectively create more of a barrier for wildlife crossing, and so I did pass along that concern to the Hennepin County Transportation folks, and they will take into account the whole issue of wildlife crossing as they get further along in that highway project. So again, just in summary, we're requesting a comprehensive guide plan amendment to redesignate the land use for these two triangle portions of the property from rural residential to neighborhood commercial. And then we're proposing that what will become surplus right-of-way with the realignment of Spring Road would also be designated neighborhood commercial. And again, you have letters of support from Hennepin County and Seaver Peterson for that effect. So just very quickly, summary and conclusion. We believe that the realignment of Spring Road presents a great opportunity to first of all avoid a costly condemnation of the Lions Tap access, and also to expand the parking lot to avoid the unsafe parking pedestrian crossings for employees and patrons. It provides the Lions Tap with parking that it needs to be able to serve its patrons and continue to offer the unique restaurant offering that it does in your community. And from the Noterman's perspective, it provides the opportunity for them to get public water and sewer to the Lions Tap, which is a benefit in and of itself, but they also are able to avoid very significant annual maintenance costs for their sanitary sewer, their on-site sewer system, and also will have a positive benefit in terms of their insurance because of the safety benefits that will occur as well. So again, we will be back to you in the future with detailed plans for the approval of the planned unit development, and that would be the point at which you would have drawings in front of you that you could approve. So really all we're asking for tonight in terms of the PUD is for you to give us feedback and agree, hopefully, as the Planning Commission did, that we're moving in the right direction. And with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Shardlow or for staff? Councilmember Wickstrom.
Yep, I do have a question, and I couldn't tell from the map, but my question is would be on the north portion of where the Lions Tap is. Is there a concern about a historic or prehistoric feature that is up on that hill that could be impacted by moving around the earth around the parking lot?
Well, the city went through a cultural resource survey back in the 90s. And one of the things that was identified were archaeological sites, prehistoric sites, and the existence of burial mounds.
Yeah.
And generally, anything within 1,000 feet of the Minnesota River, all along the southern border of the city, has potential for burial mounds. They would have to do a cultural on-site resource survey, have someone walk the property to determine if something does exist there or not. Because if you recall the Reeder Ridge proposal, which is kind of directly to the west of there were several burial mounds identified in that project. We ended up putting up conservation easements within that to protect that. So at some point, if there is a development, when they come in for development plans and zoning approval for the expansion of the parking lot, at that time, we're going to want them to do that cultural analysis to see whether or not the retaining walls or the grading might impact any potential mounds.
Okay.
Mayor, could I respond to that as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We did retain the 106 group, which is a group that specializes in doing that investigation. Mm-hmm. They did come out and do an analysis of the one area that looks to potentially be a mound, and they concluded that it was not. And when we come forward with the information for the application, we'll submit all of that. Happy to submit it to you whenever you'd like it, but I did recommend to the Notermans that they pay for that survey, and they did pay for the survey. We do have it. We do have that report.
I'd like to see that, and then like to see that also with the inventory, cultural inventory that we have. Absolutely. As well.
Thank you. Anybody else? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this issue? Thank you. Come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Dean Edstrom. My wife and I, Karen, and I live at 10133 Eden Prairie Road, at the bottom of Eden Prairie Road, just on the top of the bluff. The question before the council this evening is whether the city is going to continue to protect the bluff. Over the last 40 years that we've lived in that location, the city's done a very good job of basically protecting the bluff all along the corridor of the Minnesota River Valley. Most recently, this council, I think each member who's here today has been involved in obtaining easements and other protections for the area of the bluff between Eden Prairie Road and Dell Road, and between Spring Road and the Flying Cloud property, or the development up on Charleston Drive. In the past 30 years, back 30 years ago, when Lions Tap came in with a recommendation or a request for expansion of the tap and expansion of parking, there was a lot of controversy about the question of the bluff. The property, as it was finally approved back in 1985, restricted the footprint of the property and required them to make special provision for the slopes and indeed the historical artifact at the top of the hill. The council members were, and the members of the Planning Commission and the Park and Recreation Commission that considered that request at that time and did ultimately approve it, wanted to make sure that this seemed to be the last expansion, the last impact on the bluff that was going to occur. And I don't think that's really come through in the presentation by the proponents, nor indeed in the research by the staff. I had the opportunity over the course of the past 2 weeks, and with the great assistance of the staff, to look through the records, the minutes, the submissions to the city back 30 years ago. And I think that is something that ought to be very carefully considered by the council, as it is now being requested to allow yet another expansion of the Lions Tap footprint, including the parking lot, and indeed residential development on the bluff. In two specific respects, if you go back 30 years, you'll discover that it was determined, in fact, that there was a mound on top of the bluff. Madam Wickstrom, you're entirely correct in raising that issue. And in fact, the proponent at the time was asked to enter a restrictive covenant with the county with respect to that property, with respect to that particular mound. I do not know whether that's been done. I have not checked the property records, but I think that's something that's worth investigating. If that was not done, then in fact that would have been a breach of the agreement done 30 years ago, and I think would have an impact on how this proceeding ought to be handled. In any event, now they're here before us again to further expand the parking lot, further impact the bluff, and put up some larger berms to prevent the bluff from sliding down into the parking lot, and to add residential development. And here's another point where I disagree with the proponent. He said that the parcel, the rural parcel, the residential parcel, is developable. It is 9.6 acres, or perhaps less, I'm not sure exactly, but it's less than 10 acres. The requirement currently for development in a rural area is 10 acres. Now, they may argue about what intent they had when they purchased the property, whether it was done before or after the city changed the 5 acres to 10 acres, but the understanding back 30 years ago was that the 10 acres was a correct size required for development in a rural area. The city encouraged the proponent at that time to add land from the Charlestons who were cooperating with them so that they would have 10 acres as opposed to 9.6 acres. They did not do that. Therefore, a variance was required. They went to the Variance Commission, the Board of Appeals, requested the variance, and were granted the variance to put one home on 9.6 acres, but that variance was specifically void after 1 year if they did not undertake development. Consequently, we're back at square one with respect to the developability of that land and whether one house can go on the rural parcel. But of course, what they're proposing is to put sewer and water in there, do a PUD, which, as you know, will allow you to do a fair amount of horse trading with respect to where things go and the acreage required for any particular dwelling. And as you've seen, if you can locate any slightly level area, they might be able to put 2 or 3 houses on a slightly level area that might comply with the gradient requirements that the city has in its ordinances, and thereby really have a tremendous impact on the bluff. In that regard, I go back to the question of whether or not there is a policy or ordinance with respect to the bluff. you will find in the minutes, once again, 30 years ago, that there was specific reference to a bluff preservation policy. My own personal impression was that it was an ordinance. Perhaps it was not an ordinance, perhaps it was only a policy. But that policy was important 30 years ago. The staff has not been able to locate it unless it's been done more recently. But regardless of whether there was a formal policy, an ordinance, or an informal policy, or whatever, the council over all these years has done a very good job, I think, of trying to preserve the bluff slopes. So, as I said at the beginning, the question is whether the city is going to continue that policy or whether it's going to allow an invasion of the bluffs by development, further development of the Lions Tap site, and residential development at this meeting this evening. Now, I'd like to shift a little bit and speak about this personally. Our land borders this parcel both on the northwest, with an east-to-west line on the northerly side part of the property, and then on the east, we own all of the land down the western side of this property. Mr. Chardlow said that they would seek entrance to this property for the rural development or for the residential development from Eden Prairie Road. That must cross our property. We will not sell our property for this development. We will oppose, we will fight any effort by them or indeed, if necessary, by the city to take our property for that private development purpose. You can speak to the city attorney and see what his view might be of the appropriateness, the legality of any taking of that sort, but we will oppose it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to address the council on this? Okay. Thank you. Hi, could you give your name and address, please?
Mary Lou Carlson. I'm at.
Oh, can you tilt that one microphone that's to your
the
left?
other one.
This one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have two now?
Yes, you're in stereo.
Okay. Okay, Mary Lou Carlson. I live at 10129 Eden Prairie Road. I'm actually right behind the Lions Tap, right up the hill behind them. I've slid down the hill occasionally to go get a hamburger. But in any case, I have a couple of concerns, and I think Dean probably said it better than I did. We are concerned about the bluff. And it's not that what he's doing now is a bigger problem. It's if there have been plans way back to build homes, and if you start it there, and it's not that I don't have compassion for the fact that he's got land and he'd like to build on it and make use of it. I do, but what is the city going to do about the bluffs? Are you going to try and continue to keep them? I don't quite understand how it works, because you did on the development on the other side when they put those houses in. You saved the bluff all along the road. So, are you not going to do it then from our area on west, or are you still going to try and preserve some bluffs? I find it upsetting, and I really love the wildlife, so I know that is going to be a big problem. It's already a problem because of all the houses that are going up above us off of Eden Prairie Road, and there's going to be fewer and fewer. And when they put in all these, they have a trail on either side of my house because the valley goes along one side and on the other side also. I'm kind of up high. And that's where they go, either one side or the other side. All the deer and the turkeys and probably coyotes now and then. But I think we'll probably lose them. And if that's what the city wants, that's what's going to happen. But I would love to see some stay. And I don't know how you can do that. Other than my notes on there was, when I was driving out west one time, I saw the parks, how they had roads for just the wildlife to cross the very busy, busy highways. And they were set up with trees and bushes. You couldn't drive a car on it. It was like a bridge across the road. but you put bushes and dirt up there, and that's how they got from one side to the other. I thought it was really, really interesting. I don't know if you would do it, but, you know, it's a little bit of money, but it would be a neat way to try and preserve some of the wildlife, because they can't stay down on the river bottom all year round. It's not possible. And then there is supposedly a burial mound that was supposed to be preserved that goes, it angles right out from my house. There's an area there, and I was told, you know, that's how the Indians buried their people, and they would bring sand up from the river and they would pour it on the mounds and make them higher. So it does come right out from my house. And it's my understanding that it is a burial mound. I didn't know that they were to be preserved, but upon looking at some of the stuff that had happened a few years ago, it sounded like they were to be preserved. So might be something to check on.
Thank you. You asked us a couple of questions, so I just wanted to address them. The question about what are we going to do to preserve the bluffs. All of us up here really value the river bluffs. Short of raising taxes and getting enough money to buy all the bluffs, there's not a whole lot we can do, and that would be very expensive and be very difficult to do. What we have done, and the reason that Rita Ridge property does have preserved bluff space, is because it was composed of a fairly large parcel of land, and by allowing density transfers onto part of that land, we're able to shove the houses up and leave the bluffs relatively free of development. So that's one way that we do it. But we've been talking, I mean, I can remember discussions in the mid-90s where we were talking about bluff preservation and how do we pursue that. And, you know, our hands are kind of tied. But Mr. Franson, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, actually, the first conversation about bluff protection started in 1992, where the City Council asked staff to come up with recommendations for a bluff study committee. Dean Enstrom was a part of that. I was a staff member assigned to that. We had considerable discussion with different property owners and developers and environmentalists and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about what we should do. And we really couldn't agree upon the right approach for developing or not developing a bluff. And the final report that came to the council, and this is taken out of the minutes from August 4th, 1992, was to recommend a formation of a preservation and development framework for the entire Minnesota River Valley, including reopening the scenic overlook off of 169, and that's kind of where it left. The discussion of preservation of the bluff resurfaced in 1994 and reached its conclusion in 1997. The city was in the process of amending its MUSA line to add another 850 acres of land. And one of the comments we got from the Metropolitan Council, their environmental section, was, we don't want urban development having an impact on the Minnesota Wildlife Refuge. And the way in which that would happen is not to have urban densities encroaching onto the bluff itself. So part of the city's commitment in the report that came from the Met Council was our intent to protect the river bluff by having the MUSA line go at the top of the bluff and allowing a density of 1 unit per 10 acre below the bluff. This is the reason why the area below the bluff is guided rural residential, the reason why it's zoned rural residential at this point. So when we look at this piece of property, there's two things going on. There's a couple of problems to fix. They've got a failing septic tank and drain field. They're losing parking, they're losing access. So when you change the guide plan to expand the commercial and extend the MUSA line to the Lions Tap, you fix those things. The other part is the philosophical question is the extension of the MUSA line to this property to allow 1 unit to be sewered consistent with the city's philosophy and their comprehensive plan relative to the development approach. In other words, the density or the use of the property. There's no guide plan change for the rural residential. Mr. Shardlow said, we're leaving in that category. We're going to keep it zoned rural residential, but they're kind of giving you an inkling that they're going to come in at some point in the future and ask for development. Now, changing the comprehensive guide plan as well as expanding the MUSA line is a discretionary action of the City Council. You're under no obligation to do that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to address the council on this issue? Council, questions, discussion?
You have another.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you, Seaver.
Madam Mayor and council members, my name is Seaver Peterson. I reside at Flying Cloud Drive and Spring Road, and our family has lived there for several generations since the late 1800s, and I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the Noterman family here and their restaurant, Lion's Tap, in receiving sewer and water services as they've requested. I believe that's what I believe they're requesting water as well. Is that right, Ms. Charlo? And I'm we've enjoyed our neighborhood there over the years. I certainly respect my neighbors here. In the area, but none of which have been better neighbors to our family over these years than the Lion's Tap and specifically the Notermans and what they've been trying to do. And a couple of things. It seems to me that what they're requesting is not going up into the bluff. They're talking about dealing with their parking lot there at Lion's Tap. We are the Petersons. Are going to be losing some land there for the new road alignment, and that road alignment is being, as I understand, would be purchased at fair market value by the Lion's Tap, and they could realign their own parking, and there in front where the road is right now, and that's not impacting the bluff in any way. As I would imagine it, but I'm here tonight to say that over the years and it's been 80 years that the Tap building has been there, 81 probably. My dad and my uncle built it originally there, and that's how it started when the highway went through, when the highway was actually built. But it's been a long time, and it's been a very good neighborhood, and I'd like to see that all of the neighbor can continue to grow in a healthy way, and I'm here to support this project tonight because I believe it's a healthy thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Yes.
Good evening. Thanks, council, mayor, and staff. I'm Bert Noterman, and my wife Bonnie, and my family own Lion's Tap. We've owned it since 1977, quite a long time ago. And I can remember as a little kid going out to Ma Schaefer's, the Lion's Tap, or the Larsons, or the Petersons Fruit Mark. I remember going out there, and my dad took me out there. He'd go out there for a beer, and he'd bring me along, and I was able to buy he paid for it, of course, a 10-cent or maybe 15-cent bottle of Rock Spring from Shakopee. So that was my treat to go out there. And in those days, in the early 50s, there wasn't a lot of deer around there, but there was deer up above the old Ma Schaefer's, Buckingham's, Larson's. And frankly, it was a great sight for me to see deer around the area because there really wasn't that many deer around Shakopee and in the river bottoms. And so they started populating, and it was kind of neat. And I remember when there weren't houses up above the bluffs. There was no houses whatsoever, right on top of the bluffs. And now there's all kinds of houses on the bluffs. Even my neighbors, my friendly neighbors, and who I haven't had any problems with them. I've supported them on some dog kennel issues and other issues. I've even had Mr. Edstrom's son working for us, and I think his son probably could attest that, we are very respectful of everything and employees, and we have a little different opinion as far as values and principles and morals, and we give back to the community. And I'm sure that a lot of you people probably have had some connection with Lion's Tap, whether it's me supporting your child or you in sports or drama or the high school or foundations or anything, any nonprofit. So I've given quite a back in the community. And I'm thinking, I guess if we wouldn't, Lion's Tap would have been there, but if we wouldn't have had any houses up there in the old days, probably would have been better, right? I mean, there wouldn't be houses up there with sewer and with septic systems and wells, but as a city, the reason why we had a city put together is to kind of make things that are less expensive to people living in the area. And so you've got taxes, and I'm paying a lot of taxes. I'm paying $35,000 a year in taxes. And when I wanted to expand, that's the American dream, is to own a business and have it grow and expand. And I think I'm that point, as far as people, when they identify Lions Tap, they identify Eden Prairie and vice versa. So, I think I've been a big supporter and a big plus to the community of Eden Prairie, and I think they've helped me benefit. In the 80s when I decided, hey, we're big now, we got to expand a little, I bought 10 acres from Lynn Charlson with the idea, say, you got to buy 10 acres and you can use part of it to expand the parking lot, and then someday you can have some houses up there. So that was my dream 30-some years ago, is to maybe build a house up there. Well, now I'm 67 years old, but I've got a couple of kids that got dreams too. So, that's really not part of this issue, but everybody's making it part of the issue. I want sewer and water down at Lions Tap. And I felt that this is the opportune time when they're going to do the road and they're going to straighten out. I'm going to be having a safer intersection for everybody, including my employees and including my customers. And I'm not going to have to spend $12,000, $15,000 a year for the septic system to maintain that, which I've done all the time. And that's going to be a benefit. I'll have better fire safety by this, and also my insurance rates are going to go down. And as far as the lot, the lot up there, well, yeah, someday, yeah, I'd like to build a house or a couple houses, have a couple lots. I know the gloom and doom was, it's 10 acres, you're going to put up 26 houses. And the reality is, that's got nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But someday, yeah, I'm spending $35,000. I might want to have the ability to put a house or two up there. And guess what? If I wanted to put 25 houses up there, it wouldn't make any difference, because it's up to you guys and the Planning Commission staff to tell me, no, you can have one house or two houses or no houses. So that, I just want what is fair to me. Everybody else has had their say, and for 30 years I've been saying, hey, when am I going to get the sewer and water down there? And they'd say, well, Hennepin Village is in there. Okay, eventually, as the houses move to the bluff, you're going to get it. I said, well, you got houses up there on the bluff there from Lynn Charlson all the way down, and my neighbors got houses up there. Why can't I have something up on my property that I'm paying $10,000 just for that little piece of property for residential? So I want to maximize someday before I die. I want to be able to see the rewards of it, whether my kids move up there or some neighbor moves up there. And if they do move up there, guess what? It'll be great for the environment, because it'll be city water and sewer. And I'm concerned about the environment, and I'm concerned about wildlife. So yeah, I'm sad that there's houses up there right now that are right in the middle of the old days when those were the beautiful trails. Now they come around the houses onto my property. That's fine with me. I love wildlife, and I would not do anything to disrupt that. And I'm sure maybe the neighbors are worried that, they're going to, if I put up 2 or 3 houses there, I'm going to block their view. Well, it's my property, but the reality is, no, I'm not that kind of guy. I'd make sure that the houses are below, so that they're still going to be able to see cross the river. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noterman. And I don't think anybody could argue with the fact that the two of you are great business citizens of our community and have made great contributions to the community. Anybody else that wants to speak?
May I speak again?
Sure.
I'd just like to say that certainly Lions Tap and the Notermans and the Petersons have been good neighbors, over all these years. Seaver, of course, was there when we moved in 40 years ago, and the Notermans came in shortly thereafter. No question, Lions Tap has supported the community in many ways, supporting kids' sports teams and things of that sort. Clearly good neighbors in that sense. The thing that we're troubled by, obviously, is the impact that it may have on the bluff, which we see as a further issue, the impact it might have on our property, which is a great personal concern. None of us feel that they should not have sewer and water down there. That is clear. None of us have a problem with the diversion of the Spring Road It just makes sense from everybody's standpoint. But to insist upon development associated with that, either because it's needed for more parking spaces or economically, I see that as a real distinction. When you talk about big, good neighbors, I mean, I guess the question I would leave for the Notarmans to respond to this evening or anytime they'd like to is whether, in fact, good neighbor would include taking our property to have access to that rural development. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The public hearing is closed. Okay, council. Mr. Case.
Clearly, there are several perspectives even represented in the last two people that spoke. So, and I think there are, as people have said, and I think Mr. Franson said it clearly, there's two really distinct issues. So the first issue of whether we should try to bring sewer and water down to this property, I completely support. For just many, many reasons, but just to commend again the Notarmans. I mean, Lions Tap is absolutely a community historic icon. It's really an amazingly popular destination amenity, and I agree that people sometimes could put Eden Prairie and Lions Tap together. So I think anything that we can do as a city that legitimately would help any business in this position, we should. I think in terms of some of the people saying, haven't we had a historic tradition in our city of protecting the bluff, and we absolutely have. And again, I think you mentioned this, Mayor, we do it by a tool of either density transfer or something that occurs in the development process. So when this project, if indeed it comes forward, we will exercise the same discretion, the same attempt to use any leverage powers that we can to do the best for the city. At the same time, every private landowner has a right to actualize the potential of their land to the extent that's reasonable within the zoning code and law. So I'm completely good tonight in allowing this to go forward really as is intact. And then if and when a project proposal comes in, we'll deal with all the ramifications of one or two houses or three houses or something, where they're placed and access to them. We'll deal with that, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, that then the land can't be actualized. If it does work, then I think the owner deserves to have that potential development. So I would support, I'll listen to all of you tonight, but as of right now, I would support this pretty much intact as it's coming into the meeting tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Aho.
Yeah, and I guess I would echo Mr. Case's sentiments as well. I think to bring sewer and water down there makes sense to the Lions Tap at this time, especially if you are going to redo the roadway. I think you're going to have less disruption to the environment doing it at the same time that you're potentially doing the roadway. So I think there's an economy of doing it, the construction at one time, which I think really makes sense, and also from an environmental perspective that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing about the parking, if you look at what they're doing with the to increase the size of their parking, it's a pretty minimal amount, and I don't really see it as a large impact to the bluff area. And it's as you're changing that road as you're changing Spring Road, the way it attaches onto Flying Cloud Drive, I think it really makes sense to lose that access on Flying Cloud Drive and move that access onto Spring Road. I think you do have to kind of rejigger the parking and the way the property is laid out. So I do support that as well. And again, I think we are protecting the bluff. I think we have to view that as a separate issue. I mean, that's not before us today. We cannot be looking at this and saying, we're ruling on something that isn't before us, because it isn't before us tonight. So what's before us is, do we allow them to bring the Musa line down, and do we allow them to change their parking a little bit? And I think I support both of those.
Thank you. Councilmember Wickstrom.
Yeah. I wanted to just comment on a couple of things. One is that while we don't have clearly a bluff protection policy or anything like that. It's always been our spirit to try to have the best possible situation for the residents who move into a place, but also for all our future residents so that they can enjoy the beauty, truly the beauty of Eden Prairie. So it's the spirit, I guess, that we're talking about here, even though there's not a particular policy we can pull out. But I think everybody in the room knows. I certainly know that the residents who've spoken, all of you who've spoken, know what that bluff means to all of us. So that being said, and I mean to all of us in the room, I've heard everyone say it. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I am so delighted, to be honest with you, that in this recovering economy, we have a wonderful business in Eden Prairie who wants to expand. I think that's testimony to something really good that's happening in our economic environment. So I think that's all great. I do believe, I've been to Lions Tap many, many times, I think you need sewer and water, especially for those bathrooms that you've got. I really think you do. So I support that. I really do support all three of the requests, I have to say. And I do think that if in the future there is a time that there is a consideration for this council or a future council to look at a development, I know that you will be respectful of that land that's there.
I can't add too much, but I do have a question, and that is the third bullet in our motion is to adopt the resolution for PUD concept review on the 11.5 acres. Is that necessary to part of this? And does having that as a PUD give us exposure to development in that area that might be beyond what we would want?
The PUD is basically an idea, and the city council is not bound to approve a zoning change on the basis of a concept plan. So we asked them to put this plan together to illustrate what they'd like to do with the property, give the council and commission an idea about the scope and scale of what that is. We thought it's a good idea to memorialize what our council expectation is in the concept that the PUD concept is just the expansion of the parking lot and it's one rural residential lot. So they're very clear about what we're actually approving.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable based on the statements that my fellow council members made. I'm comfortable with this because we're really just dealing with Muse Line expansion and the rezoning of that little bit of land. The larger issue of bluff development is something we're going to have to deal with every time a proposal is brought forward to us, it sounds like, because we don't have a whole lot of resources to do it on a massive scale. So I'm fine.
Do you want a motion?
Sure.
The rest of it? I would move then that we adopt the resolution for guide plan change from rural residential to neighborhood commercial on 1.07 acres and expand the MUSA boundary to include 11.5 acres and adopt the resolution for plan unit development concept review on 11.5 acres.
Second.
Any further discussion?
There's just one more thing I'd like to say. I just want to make sure that our staff reviews the cultural
inventory.
Yes. Okay. Very, very important for us to do that because I heard a couple of different things tonight that kind of surprised me. So I just want to make sure that we do that.
We will do that, and I'll provide a short memo in your FOIA packet in the next week or so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item is first reading of an ordinance for sculptures and statuary. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We are bringing this new ordinance forward, first reading of an ordinance, basically to allow the promotion of some of the public art in our community. Currently, our city code defines a sculpture and a statue as a sign. So we've had businesses that have been looking at sculptures and they've had to use work within our sign code to do that. We've also had residential properties that are looking to add sculpture, public art, and as defined as a sign, and what we would have as an accessory structure, that none of that would be allowed in any front yard setback. So we were coming forward with a new code that would do a couple things. As I said, we would add sculpture and statue to the definition of accessory structure. We would delete it as a definition of a sign. We would add height and setback requirements, and we will also set limits on the number of sculptures and statues in most of our zoning districts as well. So we feel that this is the result of a desire for businesses and residential properties for public art, and we feel that how we would define it and regulate it would be a positive for the community. And we can certainly answer any questions that you would have, because the city staff's bringing this forward. But we did publish notice of this in the recent Eden Prairie News, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Thank you. I'm really glad to see this because I'm all in favor of more public art. But as you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I'm just wondering if there are any teeth to this with regards to sculpture, public art that could be conceived of as commercial. I mean, if McDonald's wants to put a 10-foot bronze statue of Ronald McDonald out in front of him on this area of land that we're saying they can do public sculpture, why would we not consider that a sign?
Mr. Franzen.
He's looking puzzled.
I knew this was coming.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see any discussion of it in the notes of the commission.
This is kind of interesting because my primary concern was about the floating gorillas and Godzillas that would want to bring in. So I actually looked up in the dictionary to determine what the definition of a statue is and a sculpture is. Because someone's going to come in and say, this is a sculpture, not a sculpture. So a statue is a carved or cast figure of a person or animal, one that's larger, and that is larger than life size. So yeah, you could have a 15-foot high Ronald McDonald made out of bronze. Sculpture is the art of making 2- or 3-dimensional representations or abstracts by forms by carving stone or by casting metal or plaster. So any inflatables are going to be precluded, but if you want to make the likeness of Ronald McDonald, you want to put a bronze city planner out there, you can do that. But our concern was not so much whether it's good or bad, it's about what the quantity is. And beauty is going to be the eye of the beholder, and if someone doesn't like one bad statue of the city planner, we can say we only limit it to one.
Okay. All right.
I think that the businesses that are most likely to do a sculpture are going to be the large corporations, where that's just part of their corporate identity, such as United Health Group. Or it's going to be the residential builders that want to make a statement, so that when you arrive in their area, like we had a recent request for the property out on Lake Riley, they wanted to create an identity or theme for the development, and they couldn't do it because either they had to make their sculpture small or their sign small. They couldn't do both. I don't see, when I look around in other communities on just your typical restaurants, you don't see the investment in the sculptures. They want the investments in the building architecture that says what the restaurant is, and they want the really big sign and the bright sign. That's where they're going to spend their dollars on.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this ordinance?
Seeing none, I would move to close the public hearing and approve the first reading of the ordinance amending Chapter 11 relating to sculptures and statuary.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Vacation of a drainage easement. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is in relation to the UHG property and the UHG project. The property owners have requested a vacation of drainage and utility easements to facilitate the plat of City West Second Edition for new building construction. And the drainage easements to be vacated were originally dedicated with an earlier plat. So in order to accommodate a new building, the owners would like the underlying easements vacated, and then we would dedicate new drainage and utility easements with the new plat.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Getchell? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
Sure. Hearing none, I move to close the public hearing and adopt the resolution vacating the public drainage and utility easement Have I got the right one?
You're doing
Okay.
great. Yeah.
Easements lying over, under, and across Lot 1, Block 1, City West Corporation Edition, Hennepin County, Minnesota.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Due to perceived conflict of interest, I'm going to abstain because I work at United Health Group.
Okay, thank you. Payment of claims, is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any items to question? Hearing none, is there a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aho.
Aye.
Councilmember Butcher Wickstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Case.
Aye.
Mayor Tara Lukens.
Aye. Now we've got appointments to do to the 2014 Board of Appeal and Equalization. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we are going through our annual process of appointing commissioners to Board of Appeal and Equalization. You may notice that in the past, these appointments are made at the same time that we've made appointments of our commission members, which has been in that February-March timeframe. But there has been new regulations or legislation passed related to the training of board and equalization members that are needed prior to our normal process. So we've had to change our calendar and ask that these folks step forward again at an earlier date and provide training. So you'll see in the memo, we have several returning members that work in the real estate field and are our Board of Equalization and do hear cases and appeals of property values on behalf of our city, and they will do that again in the spring of next year. But the action tonight would be to appoint these members to the Board of Appeal and Equalization for that term from March to May of next year.
Okay, so in the future, does this mean that we're going to have to do these appointments always this time of year, out of sequence with the rest of our appointments?
That may be the case, yes, Mayor.
Because new people will have to get the training?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Any questions? Is there a motion, please?
I would move to appoint to the Board of Appeal and Equalization Jim Johnson, Lyndon Moquist, Annette O'Connor, Patricia Pitcock, and Todd L. Walker for the period of March 1st, 2014 through May 31st, 2014, or until the Board of Appeal and Equalization completes its work.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Reports of council members, I wanted to report on two things. First of all, we're coming into the holiday season and Thanksgiving, and as you probably know, our food banks get kind of depleted, and there are runs to try to replenish those. And so I just wanted to remind people about PROP and that they might want to make some food contributions to PROP. And then also, CARE 11, along with Second Harvest Food Bank, is doing a big event on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, a week from tonight, at Kowalski's. They're calling it Food Fight, and they've got different broadcasters stationed at different sites across the Twin Cities, and they're in a contest with one another to get their food truck filled higher than anybody else's. So Belinda Johnson is going to be at Kowalski's during the day on Tuesday, and we'll try to get some of those food trucks filled for the food shelves. The second thing I wanted to mention is that November 30th is Small Business Saturday, an important time of year to try to patronize the small businesses within our community that could certainly use our patronage. So I wanted to remind people, not only on Saturday, the 30th, but anytime, to please patronize our local businesses. Report of the Community Development Director. Oh, that's going to be you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Getchell.
Thank you. So I think tonight is also the night of interesting and unique assessment programs that the city could take on. It has been in the work plan of the Conservation Commission for a while to examine this new PACE program, Property Assessed Clean Energy. A few years back, the state legislature passed a law that allowed for certain green or clean energy projects to be assessed by a local community. So, to date, only one city has actually enacted a program, well, up until recently, and our Conservation Commission was spending quite a bit of time looking at enacting a program and a policy where we could possibly do this. One of the biggest issues, of course, is what would be the desire in our business community to undertake the improvements. So until recently, we had two issues. One would be the time and possible difficulty in creating a program, and the second would be that we had not heard yet from some of our community businesses that might be interested. And two of those things have recently changed. One is we have been approached by the St. Paul Port Authority as an organization that would help run and administer the program, which as a city we see a really positive benefit in terms of our time and energy in allowing another entity that may do multiple projects for multiple cities and have the expertise to manage this program to take it on. And actually through that entity, through them, we heard that there was a business in our community, Southwest Crossing, that may be interested in almost $2 million of clean energy improvements. And I want to be clear, tonight is not about that project, but it could lead to that project. So tonight's action is entering into an agreement with the Port Authority of St. Paul to potentially administer future PACE projects in Eden Prairie. And at a later date, if it is this Southwest Crossing project, which we anticipate, or any other business in our community, those individual projects would come for you to be approved and to possibly be assessed. But tonight's action is to enter into this relationship with another organization that could help us administer the program. So I'm guessing by process of elimination, the gentleman on the left back there is Pete Klein with the St. Paul Port Authority, and you're welcome to come and maybe let the council and staff know a little bit about what you're doing or would do and be available for any questions before you would take any action.
Good evening. My name is Peter Klein. I'm Vice President of Finance for the St. Paul Port Authority. And we have been, I guess there's a series of events that occurred to get us to the St. Paul Port Authority offering property assessed clean energy throughout the state of Minnesota. And what it was we are the economic development arm for the city of St. Paul to help our industrial customers. And through that process, we've learned that energy efficiency and renewable energy is extremely important to our customers and makes to those industrial companies and makes them more competitive because they're spending less on their energy. So with that, we developed the Trillion BTU revolving loan fund, which can go anywhere in the state of Minnesota to finance energy efficiency projects. Cannot finance renewable energy projects like solar or wind or other renewables, but energy efficiency projects. So through that program, we've implemented dozens of projects, probably cumulatively saved 500 billion BTUs throughout the state. And as part of that, the State Department of Commerce, who we received funding for Trillion BTU, requested that I take a look at ability to implement PACE, because PACE has a few hurdles that you need to get over, one of which is the issuance of revenue bonds, and to issue revenue bonds on smaller projects is just not economically viable. And so what we have put together is the issuance of a $10 million pool that can be utilized throughout the state of Minnesota to help finance energy efficiency and renewable projects. The reason why we have signed joint powers agreements with the City of Eagan, with Cottage Grove, City of Minneapolis. So we have executed and are the administrator for the PACE programs in those communities. And the PACE programs require the issuance of the revenue bonds, but they also require ongoing monitoring and really a knowledge of the energy efficiency and the amount of energy that is saved and produced. And I think that that's why I'm here, and what we see is a statewide program is more efficient than an individual. Like Edina accomplished a couple of projects, but that's just not an ongoing viable program to do a revenue bond for a $50,000 project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
So my assumption is that there would be no cost to the city to enter into this joint powers agreement, that the Port Authority would just handle this for us at a no charge basis.
That's correct. The Port Authority again, I haven't accomplished any projects yet. We have projects in the works, but the Port Authority would be compensated through the interest rate, basically a half of 1% interest rate on a project. The City of Eden Prairie would simply enter into the joint powers agreement, and then when a project did come along, you would have to institute the special assessment on the property and then collect the special assessment and remit it to us. So something that you're very familiar with. The only additional step is this joint powers agreement.
All right, thank you. That's what I thought.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there a motion?
I would move to adopt the resolution approving the joint powers agreement between the Port Authority of the City of St. Paul and the City of Eden Prairie to implement the Minnesota Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, Minnesota PACE, in Eden Prairie.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Getchell, when we go beyond this point of actually having the program ready to roll out, are we also working on a plan of how to get businesses to know about it? Because it'd be great to do a presentation at the chamber, get on their calendar for next year, maybe through Rotary, let them know that this is available. We can talk about this when we do meet and greets.
Definitely. So we will talk about a plan to communicate and promote the program.
Great.
Definitely, we'll do that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. It's too bad our council member Nelson is not here because she likes long meetings, and she would have loved this one.
It's not over yet.
It's not over yet. Okay, aquatic design update.
Your Honor, council members, these next two items are related to the aquatics design and expansion at the community center. And the first piece is a presentation to bring you up to speed, especially on the design. And so we have some people here tonight that will help with this presentation, and we're really left with a lot of experts in the field of design and finance. And so I'll introduce them to you. That'll be part of the presentation tonight, as well as we're going to talk about how did we get to the design phase where we're at today. You saw quite a ways in the past, you saw the feasibility study, and that was the first sketch, and that is really what led us to be able to get reactions from the user groups and from other community members, and we certainly did get that. And that was the last presentation where I was back here before you talking about all of those workshops and meetings that we had, the online engagements tools that we used. And so that really expanded some of the scope and gave us some new and different ideas to add to the project. So you're going to see what some of those things were and are tonight. And you'll also see some of the costs that are associated with it. I want to do just a little bit of show and tell, because you're going to see on PowerPoint presentations, you're just going to see some overview slides. The work that has been done on the design side really lends itself to this amount of work in detail. And so this is part of what I think is helping give us some good pricing indications, as well as bringing the right experts to the table at that pricing level too. So a lot of work behind it. That represents phase one. Design documents. There would be more if we were to move forward with phase two, and a few more documents to get us to go out to bid, and that'll ultimately be an action item for you to consider tonight. So at the end, we'll walk you through some of those next potential steps and see the direction that you would like to see us head. You'll also get the idea of what the cost estimates are and how they were arrived at, and the credibility that I think is behind those. Again, we'll show you some updated operating forecasts, because this is really a 30-year decision. When you think about our past pool, it got us 30 years. And hopefully by the good design work that we've done, if this were to move forward, this would take it for 30 years. And so what would that look like in an operating revenue and expense side? We'll also give you an update on the fundraising opportunities through the Fox Jets. Mark Davis is here. The update on the grant through Hennepin County, and then we'll talk about what are some of those funding methods that we could use, and Mr. Getchell will walk us through that, and then talk about some of the next steps. So again, just to bring you up to date with the people that have been involved, I think we've tried to include as many people as we can, and I'll definitely be leaving some people out, but almost every department in the city has touched this. Specifically, our facility staff, who are the people that run the current pool and make sure that everything is operating and working well. They've had some good input onto the design, especially in the mechanical side of things. Myself and also Wendy Sevenick, Community Center Manager, and Beth Witt are here tonight, and they've done a lot of work and really have looked at, just like I showed you, the designs and the big role of plans. There's a lot of formulas and a lot of input that's gone into what some of our projections are, and Beth and Wendy have really done a good job and worked hard at that. Also, Mark Davis is here tonight from the Fox Jets, and he'll tell you a little bit more about what their fundraising commitment would be. In the far back, we've got Suko Cheever, our finance manager, and also Paul Donna is here, who is our financial advisor. So any real technical questions, we can certainly have the people that are here tonight be able to help out. We also have Victor Picciotti from HGA Architects, who's been our lead architect, Brian Recker from RJM, and he'll also speak on some of the cost estimates. Nancy Blankford is not pictured, but she's also out here too, has been a part of the project team and helping with the design. She's from HGA as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Victor, and he's going to walk you through kind of where we've come in the design process, and you'll get to see some photos and some schematics and understand what it looks like kind of to date.
Good evening. The first slide that you have in front of you is just to connect the dots a little bit. It's been almost exactly a year since we were before you presenting the results of the feasibility study. And you may recall that that process was about taking a lot of qualitative needs that were emerging from the community and turning them into quantifiable space programs. Testing those programs on the site. We know it's a limited amount of area south of the existing building, and then assigning some preliminary budgets for the project. You can see there's a gap of time between the feasibility study and a master planning phase. That was, as Jay mentioned, a fairly extensive public participation phase, some town hall meetings that you all attended, as well as meeting with other stakeholder groups. In June of this past year, you all authorized our team to pursue two primary design phases, master plan phase and the design phase, which has taken us to approximately the 50% point of design between that blank sheet of paper and having full bid documents ready for construction. The master planning phase acknowledged that this facility would need to be built in two parts. It's a programming necessity that during no time can the existing aquatics programming go dark. Aquatics programming has to be available to members and constituents all the time. So phase one would be to construct an aquatics addition while the current aquatics remains up and running, and then phase two would come online later. We planned both phases together in order to understand how phase two could plug into phase one in a seamless way. So anything constructed in phase one could function as a standalone facility, but was also structurally prepared to receive phase two. In the design phase, the focus was on phase one. That's what we were authorized to do. So the documents that Jay was showing to you represent about 80 or 90 drawings that define the current state of the phase one project. Just to refresh your memory somewhat, this is from September of last year. This was a feasibility study that really illustrated two primary natatorium programs. A lap swimming component that would be for obviously lap swimming, competitive swim, and other like functions, and a recreational component that would feature a zero depth entry pool, play features for small children, warm water swimming, swim lessons, and so forth. In the upper level, obviously these are two tall volumes, but we do have an area of space that caps a single-story volume where there was a proposal to somewhat expand the fitness areas on the second floor of the building. So that had been included in the feasibility study. We include this slide just to show some very crude massing models that were part of that feasibility study, and you'll see what looks like a very final rendered building that we've advanced to at this point in the process. I want to spend just a little time on this slide because this is the conclusion of the master planning phase, and it shows the amenities in both phases of the project. What you see towards the bottom of the screen is phase 1, which would be the initial addition. You can see that what had been a 12-lane lap pool and a deep water pool has been converted through extensive meetings with users to 2 8-lane lap pools. There seemed to be a lot of consensus that that was the most flexible use for that natatorium. So 1 swim lane was added since the feasibility study. There are now 2 8-lane lap pools. One of them designed very much for swim training and competition. The depths are set up for that, as well as the optimal temperature. The second pool in that natatorium can also be used for lap swimming, but it has a deeper water environment. You see at the bottom of the page 2 1-meter diving boards, so there's a 12-foot depth there that can be used for diving. That end of the deep water pool could be flexible for many other uses: scuba diving lessons, synchronized swimming, water polo. Not regulation for those uses, but could be used informally for those uses as well. The second natatorium features a zero-depth pool, which is like wading into a lake. It's great for families with small children, but it's also an accessible pool. So folks with disabilities, seniors, folks in wheelchairs access the pool gently through that kind of feature. At the bottom, you see a pool labeled P5. That's a constant depth 3'6" pool, which is a very common dimension for water aerobics, swim lessons. There also could be 3 60-foot lane warm water swimming lanes in that particular pool. There are some folks that enjoy lap swimming more recreationally in a warmer water environment. This pool would allow that as well. And there's also a master plan for a water slide and a plunge pool. This is the upper level plan during the master plan. One change that changed from the feasibility study is the expansion of spectator seating. The feasibility study included seating for 150 spectators. Again, fairly unanimous response from users that would be inadequate for a lot of swim meets and other events that would be occurring here. So this seating capacity has been doubled to 300 seats, constructed out of concrete, elevated so that all the area beneath the bleachers is available for storage for various aquatic support equipment. The other change in the upper floor here, you can see a lot more expansion and thought given to that upper level fitness area. Rather than one isolated added room, through conversations with staff, there are many needs in those areas, not only in the area of exercise equipment, but providing expanded area for fitness classes. And we'll come back to that in a moment. This drawing begins just a couple of excerpts from where we are today. You can see it's dated October 13th. We're now at the design development phase, which is a common phase where the drawings can be submitted to contractors and subcontractors. While they are still cost estimates, not bids, there is enough detail in the documents now to get a very good idea of the potential cost for the project, much more so than where we were at the feasibility study stage. This is a site plan. A couple features to illustrate here are you can see a wide 10-foot path leading from the top of the page. That connects to the existing west parking lot and will provide a service access to a new pool mechanical room. There'll be 2 or 3 chemical deliveries per year that service the filtration equipment that can come along that path, as well as maintenance access for that equipment. The other item to call to your attention is towards the bottom of the page, you see a line that has a couple curves in it that wraps the building. While it appears fairly flat, there is about a 6-foot grade change from the existing building down to the existing sidewalk. And in order to keep the building at one level platform and connected to the existing building, that line represents a retaining wall that begins really at 0, and at that bottom corner, you'll see about a 5 to 6 foot retaining wall that then tapers back up again as you approach the entrance. That's not a bad feature to have. The building is fairly proximate to Valley View Drive, and while one never wants to assume these circumstances, should a vehicle ever come off the Valley View Drive onto the site, it would impact a wall before hitting the building. So it's a nice safety feature for the site. This represents current progress on Phase 1. Just a quick tour through the plan. You can see a dedicated aquatics entry just to the upper right-hand corner. that staff could choose to staff or provide prox card entries as they deem fit. Once entering the lobby, there are 2 rooms just to the south, a flexible meeting room that could be used for aquatics, but any other community program gives the staff flexibility to have yet another meeting room in the building. There's some public toilets, and below that a training room. That will look and feel very much like a fitness room, but will have flooring allowing a wet environment and will feature equipment that's specialized for training of swimmers. It'll be sort of their fitness environment for training of competitive swimming. You can see towards the top of the page in gray the existing locker rooms in the building. Just south of the same corridor that is there now will be new locker rooms, what we call wet locker rooms. This will allow the existing locker rooms, which feel more like club or spa locker rooms with the carpeting, to remain that way. The new locker rooms, all tile, taking on lots of water. You could spray down the floor, a different kind of environment that really lends itself to swimming. You can see new toilet and shower facilities in there, as well as about 100 lockers per gender for that particular function. On the upper level, you can see there will be an elevator introduced into this building, another change from the feasibility study. Meeting with users and staff and leaders of the building, what we uncovered was there's one small passenger elevator currently serving the entire facility. It is not adequate to move fitness equipment in and out of the building for it to be serviced. So fitness equipment like treadmills need to be hand carried down existing stairs to get them in and out of the building. This elevator is large enough to fill that maintenance function. It's also large enough to accommodate an emergency gurney. Should there ever be an emergency on the upper level of the building, now there'll be emergency staff access through this elevator. It will also allow access to an upper level of bleachers. So spectators could access an upper level of bleachers, see the water environments from up high, and then filter down to their seat in the bleachers. This is the current state of the fitness area. This project now adds approximately 3,000 additional square feet of fitness. A couple of changes to call out here. The existing large fitness studio that's off to the left will be expanded, allowing for larger capacity classes. A new fitness studio will be added in the new addition. You can see it labeled there as Group Fitness, 1,430 square feet, as well as space for approximately 10 to 15 new exercise machines to expand some of that capacity. These are some three-dimensional renderings of where the design is today. The reddish material implies a brick that would match the existing brick of the building, so the two would tie together. Some of the different variations of browns that you see there tie in with different aluminum colors that are on the existing building. There are 3 or 4 different shades from a very light bronze to a dark aluminum on the existing building. This is our way to knit the aluminum and the brick colors of the existing with the new. What you do see that's different here is a larger proportion of glass from the existing building. There will be some south-facing windows, which will have features that can make them translucent or block out the light if it's ever a distraction during swim competition, but with the opportunity for lots of daylight and even sunlight in those environments. This is a view where you can see how it ties into the existing building. Just to the right of the slide is the exterior of one of the existing racquetball courts. And so moving left from there, you see there'll be a few steps as well as a ramp off to the side providing access to the new aquatics entry. And the windows that you see off to the left there are windows into that new conference room as well as the new aquatics fitness area. This was a cover representing the progress today. As Jay mentioned, now there are approximately 90 drawings that represent a lot of mechanical, electrical, structural engineering that has gone into these documents to bring them to today's resolution. This slide just talks a little bit about some of the amenities that have been changed or added as a result of ongoing stakeholder input during the process. Many of these have been covered. Through tours, we did add some below-the-deck lane line storage. You see a lot of the swim lane markers coiled in a lot of other facilities sitting off to the side of the deck. This facility is programmed to have containers below the deck that pull those liners in. Also, there's been the addition of a spa and hot tub in Phase 2. That's something, while it's a smaller amenity, we heard loud and clear from constituents that was a desired amenity as part of a new aquatics center. We have tried to implement sustainability and environmental stewardship. I won't go through these in detail. One to highlight is the fact that aquatics environments are hot, humid environments, and you have to circulate air through them. There are mechanical mechanisms to take the hot air, harvest the heat from it, reuse it to heat the pool water and the air in the space. We just listed out a number of benefits here. Again, won't go through each and every one of these, but the message in these slides is that the staff and the design team has tried very hard to accommodate programming that touches each and every constituent of Eden Prairie. There are multiple bodies of water that will favor programs for small children all the way to seniors at varying different temperatures, a recreational user, as well as a competitive swim user. The expansion of the fitness has taken on more attention since the feasibility study. More needs have been recognized at that time. So while this is primarily an aquatics project, there also are enhancements to meeting spaces, to party and birthday rooms, as well as to fitness environments. So there are non-aquatic related functions that serve the aquatic and also support other programs that are currently at the community center. This is a diagram that just tries to clearly show the phasing between Phase 1 and Phase 2. Some of the considerations you'll be discussing tonight are potential next steps, whether to proceed with further documentation of Phase 1 that would allow documents to go out to bidders, and you'll be hearing some pros and cons on proceeding with documentations of both phases simultaneously. While they will, in either case, be constructed separately, we'll be talking a little bit about the advantages and or disadvantages of proceeding with Phase 1 as a standalone building or packaging both phases together and bidding them together, but still constructed as two different phases. So this slide describes if you were to proceed with Phase 1 only, we would be proceeding with construction documents into March of next year, at which time they would be bid. Council would receive bids at that time that are the foundation for possible contracts with contractors. So that would be the next decision point. Occupancy of Phase 1 would happen approximately in a year in the late spring of 2015. Phase 1 and Phase 2, we would be roughly on the same schedule. What it would mean for our team is we would provide more resources to the project to take Phase 2 from master planning phase, catch it up to Phase 1, and produce the construction documents for both phases. We can accomplish both efforts in the same time frame. For us, it affects the amount of staff and resources, architects and engineers that we would put towards the effort. So at this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Brian Recker, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the cost estimating procedures and the costs of these improvements.
Thanks, Victor. We've had the opportunity to work with the team throughout the design process and been able to provide budgets along the way through the progression of the design. We do understand how important it is for cities to have accurate budgets and accurate cost estimates as decisions are made as far as moving forward. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our construction cost estimating process as we do progress, because it is a continual refinement of numbers throughout the design. We do start with what we call a conceptual phase. It's very similar to the feasibility study that you had seen from HGA in regards to just general plan layout and maybe some renderings. And with that information, we rely upon our historical cost information that we have for past aquatic centers that we've completed to do more of a square footage cost analysis to get an order of magnitude of cost as far as where we're at that point. As the design progresses, well, so does our cost estimating then as well. So we go into what's called a schematic phase, where there's more of a refinement of the floor plan, there's more of a refinement of the exterior elevations, and some understanding of the mechanical and electrical systems, at which point we still rely upon our historical cost information, but we start to engage some subcontractor partners in the industry for larger systems such as structure and mechanical and electrical systems. At this point that Victor's mentioned is we're at the design development phase, and there's much more detail now that we have with the plans, and so much detail to the effect that we can engage subcontracting partners for all phases of the work now at this point. So we engage 2 or 3 contractors for each phase of work. We're able to work with them to bring in those cost estimates, and really what that does is utilizing their knowledge, we're able to identify market trends for what's happening in the marketplace, utilize their specialty for cost-saving information if we need to do that as well, and just general specialized knowledge of their work. Well, what that does for us at this point is it allows us to have a very high level of confidence in our cost estimate to bring to the council tonight for where we're at. Based on that information for phase 1, we were able to bring in all the cost estimates, and we've categorized those totals really into 6 basic areas of the project. You can see we have site work and foundations, building structure and enclosure, the mechanical electrical systems, the aquatic systems, general finishes throughout the space, and items of owner equipment and systems that are more related to an owner-type purchase. With that being said, the total Phase 1 cost estimate with all the costs included is $12,211,499. Now, in looking at this, Victor mentioned a little bit earlier in regards to looking at Phase 1 and Phase 2 and having ideas on options for that as well. So what we looked at is we actually put an estimate to Phase 2 of the project as well. And based upon the design, we've estimated the cost of Phase 2 to be just about $7.2 million, as you can see there. Now, that $7.2 million cost is what we estimate the cost to be if Phase 2 was bid in spring of 2014, along with Phase 1. By doing so, you are gaining some efficiencies than you would if you were to complete Phase 1 completely and come back at a later time to do Phase 2. Some of the areas of inefficiencies that you have when you have 2 separate complete projects is with the contractors that you would have, there's increased cost for mobilizations for all the contractors for 2 different projects. There's temporary versus permanent construction. When you know you're going to do Phase 2 directly thereafter, after Phase 1, you're not having to complete certain work and stand alone for Phase 1 because you know Phase 2 is coming right directly behind. And also with contractors, the larger the project that they're able to bid on, the lower their fee will be when they bid on the project. So in looking at those inefficiencies, we're able to put together an estimated cost for that. Of this project, we're looking at nearly $400,000 or $395,000. So looking at the cost estimate, should Phase 2 be bid separate from Phase 1, we'd be looking at probably around $7.6 million for that. Now, in addition to that, we also looked at the fact that over the last several years, we, in the construction industry, have not seen much or experienced much for cost escalations. Due to the depressed economy, construction costs actually have maintained relatively flat for quite a while. Reasons for that is because of the economy, there was a reduced number of projects available for contractors to be able to bid on. There was a lot of aggressive pricing for those projects to try to maintain labor forces of contractors. And also just general fee reductions trying to be able to win that work to keep people busy. As was mentioned earlier tonight, we are starting to see a rebound in the economy. And with that, now we're starting to see some cost escalations coming back into the construction industry of what we've been accustomed to years past. So for 2013, we've experienced about a 3.3% cost escalation across the board for projects that would have been bid about a year ago. There's some anticipated cost escalations that will be coming our way here in the upcoming years. Reasons for that is increased material costs, but also increased construction activity. Right now, in our market here in the Twin Cities, we're a little bit nervous because the industry's already seen a reduction in the workforce due to the number of reduced projects, but now we're starting to see some larger projects make their way back into the Twin Cities. The Viking Stadium has an awfully large impact on the local labor market. Projects like the St. Paul Saints Stadium, discussions of possible expansion at the Mall of America. These are projects that will cause our labor force to be a bit strained, and with that comes increased cost on that as well. So when we looked at an example, if the phase 2 of the project were to be bid as just an example, let's say 3 years from now, what we do when we put together our cost estimates is we take into consideration that construction escalation per year of what that will do in regards to the cost, let's say 3 years from now. So the example that we put together here would be if the project were to be bid in spring of 2017 for phase 2. Here you see the current estimate with $7.2 million, and with the delayed project inefficiencies that would be added to that. In addition to that would be 3 years of construction cost escalation that total about $777,000. So the anticipated cost for phase 2 in 3 years would be approximately $8.4 million, or an increase over the original budget estimate of about $1.172 million. So in summary, looking at the complete project budget, right now with phase 1 and phase 2 as a complete project budget, all bid within the time frame in spring of 2014, would expect a construction cost of about $19.4 million as compared to if phase 1 and phase 2, with phase 2 bid in 2017 of about $20,600,000.
So then onto the operating projections, and we have some practical and recent experience with this. If you go back to 2006 and 7, prior to the renovation at the community center, we have a budget line that the next year, once the community center is remodeled, jumps up and then continues to jump up for about 4 or 5 years. And now we've kind of flattened out and hit kind of a stride that is associated with what the current or the recently improved facilities operate at. So we've used some of those models to project, and also obviously the programming space that would be in place to project some of the operating revenue and the operating expenses that we would have going forward. So there aren't any exact years tied to these, but it's certainly numbers that we believe are achievable in the future if we do phase 1 or if we do phase 1 and phase 2. And you saw this in the feasibility study, but this has also been updated based on the new and different amenities and the mix of amenities that are in compared to the feasibility study. A heavy influence in the revenue on the membership, also the pool usage, the rental of the pool, the lesson program, and a little bit on concessions. Most of most of the other things follow a pretty natural 2 to 3% progression. So those are the operating revenues, the operating expenses, and it really gets you to a couple bottom lines to look at. One is if phase 1 only, that obviously still leaves us with the old pool that we have. We believe that phase 1, the bottom line at the community center, not including the debt payment, but the bottom line of the net operating could be around $200,000. For if we put all of the phases together, there could be another $500,000, and we suggest that both of these numbers then could be applied towards the debt payment. This isn't, because it's not an enterprise fund, this doesn't reflect all of those expenses in it, but this would be somewhat of a net that could go back towards the debt payment that would be associated with it. So we've got tonight Mark Davis with us, and I'll ask him to come forward. And Mark's been at the Parks Commission as well, and we've heard from him a couple times their willingness to be involved. And also, Foxjets were involved financially with the feasibility study, and they've also been at the table trying to help us best understand the needs of not only their group, but competitive swimming in general. So they've been really invaluable to the planning of the project as well.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Mark Davis, and I've been the president of the Eden Prairie Foxjets for 18 years. Just a quick recap of who we are. Eden Prairie Foxjet Swim Team is a family-based nonprofit youth organization that provides a team swimming experience for youth from ages 5 to college. We've been in the Eden Prairie community for the past 32 years. We promote swimming and the values of athletics such as physical fitness, fun, perseverance, goal setting, and discipline. Our overall team goal is to promote swimming as a healthy, lifelong activity. Just a quick look at where we've been and how large we've grown. We're one of the largest teams in Minnesota and have been for many, many years. As you can see, back in 1995, we had 160 swimmers. We put on there the Olympic years. You can see the spike that occurs when people get excited about the Olympics and swimmers like Michael Phelps. In 2012, we had 340 swimmers. Today, with girls swimming season just concluding, I think we're about 310. And should go up to 320 or 330 before the season's over. So we're consistently pushing the limits of the pool resources we have in the community. And we're excited that we're back here talking about new water and pool resources. As you can see, we're still a Eden Prairie-based program. 85 to 90% of all our swimmers each season are Eden Prairie residents. One of the things that I'm most proud of and have been for a long, long time is we have never turned away one swimmer that wanted to swim with our program if they couldn't financially afford the Foxjet program. So we provide scholarship at will for those that want to participate and have done so for every year that I've been involved with the Eden Prairie Foxjets. Quickly of what we've accomplished. We've taught over 6,000 swimmers the basic fundamentals of swimming. We've won 27 state championships over the last 20 years, so over half of the state swimming championships the Eden Prairie Foxjets are proud to have accomplished. We've sent 300 swimmers on to college swimming, which is one of our great accomplishments. We've had 25 academic high school All-Americans, 20 Olympic qualifiers, numerous senior and junior national qualifiers, and we're very proud of what we've accomplished in Eden Prairie over the last 32 years. We're here to support the current proposed design, 2 8-lane pools, 2 8-lane 25-yard pools, plus the 20-yard swim lesson pool. To us, that really expands the programmatic and meets the programmatic needs of not just the Team Foxjet, but the community in total. We've provided a list here, but it enhances city programming, swim lessons, master swimming, lap swimming, water aerobics, open swim, as well as providing additional practice time for the Eden Prairie Foxjets and the high school programs. So we're very much in support of the current design. We've spent a lot of hours working with city staff to get to this design, and we think it will benefit not only our program, but the community in total. We're also here to say that we're ready to support with our time, our volunteers, and our capital resources. We're going to commit to go out into the community and raise $500,000 to be part of the assistance to bring this and make this a reality. We've put together a comprehensive plan together, and we'll work through that if you guys push this program forward. but to sell naming rights for the aquatic centers, the pools. We'd like to do a donor recognition wall and raise a significant amount in that way. And then through long-term rental pledges. The Eden Prairie Foxjets are also ready to commit $80,000 to name the competition pool after our club. And so part of that $500,000, we're going to put our paycheck, our money where our mouth is, and we're going to start our process and say we only have $420,000 left to raise. And in any event, this is probably the last thing that I will do personally to try to finish my career up in Eden Prairie and as the president, but we've been waiting a long time, since 2005, to get it back on the agenda for another discussion for additional water resources here in the community. We're very excited. Our entire program is excited, and we'll get behind helping both raise the money and generate excitement. It's going to be a great enhancement. Many of the surrounding communities have already enhanced their aquatic centers and their pool facilities, and so we'd like to do what we can to help move the aquatic program forward as well. So thank you so much for letting me spend just a couple minutes in your late evening tonight.
Thank you, Mark.
So I have a quick update on the Hennepin County grant application that you'd authorized us to move forward with. $325,000 is their max. We did ask for that. December 17th is when Hennepin County Board will act on that. So I'll probably follow their board meeting that night, but we'll for sure know the next day would we be potentially gaining those dollars. We think there's a pretty good chance there. It's actually their lowest number of grant applications that they've had to date. So I also think that we're in a good position if this is a project we want to move forward with. It is something that I think they would want to have their mark on as well and be a part of. So I think we have a good chance, but we'll know December 18th if it would be something that would be available to us. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Getcho to talk about some bonding options and how we would potentially be able to pay for a good share of this project.
Thank you, Jay. I have a couple slides devoted to funding and bonding options. I think the first thing you see is that the type of debt issuance that you have has a lot to do with what's required of the project. And there are two main sources of funding that cities have been using for these types of projects. I'll talk about one that we have actually never used and is new. But the first one is your typical lease revenue bonds that would be issued by the HRA. It would not be backed by the full faith and credit of the city, but would be appropriated through the general fund. And we do have a few methods that we could lower the interest rate with some backstop and lease payment issues. The second option that's more interesting and being used quite a bit more and has a lower interest rate is the use of tax abatement bonds. And we've spent some time, our finance manager and talking with our financial advisor about the possible use of tax abatement bonds. And it does require quite a few more processes and elements that the city would need to go through to issue the bonds. But we're hearing that the benefits in a lower interest rate, up to 0.5% or more, those outweigh the costs of issuing tax abatement bonds. I believe the city of Woodbury just recently, within the last year or two, had a major expansion of their sports center, and they used tax abatement bonds. So it's a new method. There's more work related to it, but it definitely, you can come out ahead. So we'll be working with our financial advisor, and that's down the road. A couple other slides, and really important slides that we talk about would be funding a project such as this and not increasing our city debt levy. That's a comment that's been made quite a bit. The idea that we have pretty fast decreasing debt levies in our community, and we could take on the pool project and it would not increase our levy. So the first option shows how that would look through lease revenue bonds at a couple different levels. The red line shows our current decreasing debt payments. The other line, purple line, shows what a phase one cost would be and the final line, the higher line, the 16 million line, and you're going to see the whole funding package would be the most debt that we would issue for the entire project. I will say you see a little spike in 2014 or 15, but we have several different methods where we can keep that blue line below the black line. And the black line is where we currently are. So you can see there, even if we issue debt for both phases of the project and do the project completely as you've heard about tonight, when we get to 2017 and beyond, we still have annual debt payments that are $500,000 less than what we have now by taking on that project. So if you look at the next slide, it looks even better with the tax abatement bond. So that shows even lower cost of debt issuance with tax abatement bonds. And obviously these are estimates. We have not only not bid the project yet, we haven't issued the debt, so we don't know what the interest rates are, but these are our current estimates. And then the last slide is important because the council spends a lot of time talking about the next 10 years of citywide capital improvements. We have a lot of transportation projects, road projects, facility projects, and buildings in our community that are assets that we need to continue to protect. So you can see here that if you take the pool piece out, so you're going to take that debt on for the pool, you'll have a debt levy, and that's separate. If we continue with our 10-year capital improvement plan, we plug in all of our projects, we have the fund balance to continue to invest in all of our other projects in Eden Prairie in addition to the pool. And the last slide is that I have is a funding summary based on what you heard tonight. If you look at that $19.4 million number of 2 phases, we are estimating that we may use a little more, almost $2.6 million of fund balance in our capital improvement fund. And you saw that that was, in that $12 million plus range. We've had, as you know, 2 and almost 3 good years of positive financial results in our community, and it should be no different in 2013. When we have positive financial results and we have more revenue than we budgeted and our expenditures are lower than what we budgeted, most of that money goes into our capital improvement fund, so we're able to fund our CIP. We think that we'll be able to take an amount of money in that $2.6 million range to put toward this project that we would not put toward debt, and you still see the balance in the capital improvement fund being healthy. So in addition to what was mentioned with the Hennepin County grant and the Foxjet fundraising, if you look at the total potential cost of debt issuance, that's at $16 million number you saw on the earlier chart. And another new piece of information is, and it's not reflected in the chart, and as Jay mentioned earlier, it's possible that we'll be able to commit the positive operations of just a community center due to this project toward that debt. So if you had an estimated average annual debt payment of $1.3 million and you can get from $200,000 to $500,000 annually, you're in the neighborhood of 20–30% of your annual debt can come out of the community center, and that isn't even reflected in the earlier slides. That would further reduce the debt that you see on those charts, and we would obviously these are future council policy decisions, but we want to show you that we could direct the positive results of the community center toward that debt. And I think yes, Jay has the last couple slides.
So just as the council has been involved and all the user groups have been involved along the way, so has the Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Commission. And at the November meeting, they saw a presentation very much like this. There are a few updates that we've been able to add to get numbers a little tighter maybe than what we were able to tell them about. But essentially at their meeting, they unanimously voted and strongly recommended to move forward with the design and bidding documents for Phase 1 and Phase 2 so that there might be some potential to realize some of those cost savings of doing it as a full project. So that was their recommendation to pass on to the council tonight. So I just want to go back and revisit. Victor had basically told you what it would take in the next steps. We've had the contract with HGA, and that's taken us on phase 1 to design documents. What's left to be done on design documents to get it to bidding are the bidding documents in phase 1. Both of those things would have to be done for phase 2. The design documents for phase 2, so big roll of plans, plus the bidding documents. And so the next item that we would ask you to consider is to authorize expanding the contract with HGA to be able to do that. What that allows to have happen is we can then go out to bid, and that would happen in March. Until you go out to bid, everything is an estimate. But going out to bid in March would bring another opportunity back to the council to say, here's what the actual costs are. Do we still want to move forward with the project? So tonight isn't about approving the project. Tonight's about having the design and documents put together in a way and developed in a way that would allow it to go out to bid like all of our other park and street projects go out to bid, and come back, and we would open those bids, we would present them back to the council. I think what we would suggest that we would do too, like we have in other projects, we'll go back to Round Lake with a little different scale, but we would have an opportunity to take a look at what might be some of those alternates that we could put into place. Some of those things could be, for example, what if the water slide wasn't put in? When you think about the design, that's not in the middle of the design. So that might be an easy one for us to come back and say, gosh, we're really pushing the prices that we were hoping for. Do we take that out of the project for now and think about it in a different day? There's some other things that might be, a little less cost intensive than the water slide, but could add up to a decent amount of dollars if we were to do it differently or pull back on that. There's some things, if we were to elect to think about them or look at them as alternates, that they're so integral to the project and the project design that we'd have to be willing to spend a little more architectural time to draw it two different ways and bid it. So some of it can get a little more complicated. An example is if we would say, let's look at, do we want 150 or 300 bleachers, seating capacity? That's actually more design time in order to bid it out. It's a little more complicated to bid it out. So there are some things that we would need to move forward with the assumption that it would, if we were going to accept the project, they would be accepted within the project. There are some other things that we can have outside of the project as an alternate that we could choose at the time of opening bid. Should we keep it in? We would then know the value of it. Do we think that value is commensurate with what the benefit to the project is too? So there's still multiple stops along the way for the council. Another option would be is to just go forward with the bidding documents for phase 1 and only bid phase 1, and then at some other point in time look at doing the phase 2 part of that. The downside obviously on that is we still end up with the current pool that we have. We have some time, but we don't have a lot of years left. The roof we have plugged in the CIP. If we were to do nothing, we have money plugged into the CIP to replace the roof within the next 2 years. We still, again, know it's 30 years of mechanical equipment. They're not clunking. They're not on their very, very last legs, but we're at 30 years, so we're not that far away from probably needing to replace or upgrade that. So there are some gambles on that side of the equation too. So knowing that, this is a project that has a lot of people's attention and has gotten a lot of involvement from the community and help and design from the community, and knowing that council will get questions from people on the street or email. Certainly tonight's also a good night with all the people that we have here and all the experts in the field to be able to ask any questions, and we can give you our best answers. So with that, I'd stand for questions in general, and then after you feel comfortable of moving on to the next item, that could be determined which way you'd like to go with the next step.
Great. Good 360-degree presentation of all of the issues surrounding this. So thank you, and thank you to all of the people that came tonight to speak to their areas. Council, any questions for any of the presenters? Mr. Aho.
Well, I've got a number of questions. I'm not sure exactly where to start with this, but I guess one thing is if we're looking at the design and we're looking at phase 1 and phase 2, aspects, and I think Jay, you just alluded to kind of some of the answer to that is if we were just to say, okay, let's just proceed with phase one, really the inevitable is true that we're going to have to do something with phase two pretty soon afterwards. And so from a perspective of feasibility and saving money and project cohesiveness, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense from in delaying phase two from the cost estimating that you're looking at doing. So really, we really have to, even though it'd be constructed in two phases, we really have to look at this as one project in totality, even though we initially kind of started talking about, well, you could do phase one and not really do phase two right away. I mean, really, when you look at it in my eyes, it seems like it's more of a total project and looking at phase one and two right out of the gate. When you say that we're at 50% of the design right now, or 50% of the process in terms of getting to actual bidding, is that because we're only at 50% because we have to really do the design documents for phase two and the bidding documents for both of the phases? Is that why we're only at 50% at this time?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that completely. Let's see. In terms of the funding side of things, it sounds like you're projecting that it's really a revenue neutral project in terms of tax impact to our residents, based on using either the tax abatement bonding or the revenue bonding, looking at those two sources of income in conjunction with the money from potential money, the grant money from Hennepin County, the money from that the Fox Jets are committing to. And in addition to the additional revenue that revenue stream from increased memberships, et cetera, and use of those facilities, that really we're looking at a overall tax neutral situation for the residents. So approving this project, if whatever the cost would be, it's not going to increase taxes. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think the way to maybe put some arms around that too is both at the macro scale that Mr. Getcho showed, that overall city bonds are falling off. We've also had some of our debt that was directly at the community center related to ice arenas fall off too. So the financial picture of the community center operations is better based on a couple $100,000 a year of debt falling off there. And as this slide shows, the red line of how the schedule of city debt is expected to go throughout the years, that there is that capacity so that there isn't the need to raise taxes for this project.
And in terms of the estimates that you've given, looking at potential increase in revenue of up to $500,000 potentially of revenue generated from fees associated with the new facilities, is that including all the additional maintenance costs that would be above and beyond what we currently have because we'd have new facilities?
Yeah, and I guess a way to look at that when I kind of look at the numbers, how they are today and how they would be projected going forward, and think about the scale and is that percentage equal to the scale of things. We've said before too, if we built this same addition, and it wasn't an addition, it was built on a separate piece of land and had to be its standalone, the numbers you would see would be quite a bit different, and they wouldn't be as positive of numbers. But because we have some economies of scale, some systems in place, we did factor in additional staffing for the maintenance of the facility because it's going to be a bigger square footage than what's already there. So we factored that in, but then that also goes into why we can factor in the revenue being higher too when you think about the lines for swimming lessons and what they have to try to fit into. And also the way we're set up now, there are certain times of the day where the user groups that are available, it isn't a good time for them or a good situation for them. So I believe that we will be more of an all-day use for many different types of user groups. You rarely, if ever, see parents and young children during the 9 to noon time in our pool. If you have a warm water with a play feature, you will see those. I think you'll also see more seniors wanting to be in the warmer water than we have right now. And so, just the benefit of the different types of amenities spread us out throughout the day with many different user groups versus heavy use after school with the swim teams, heavier use at night with the lessons. We're going to see more morning and daytime use, plus we have more square footage and opportunities for bodies of water.
I would say anecdotally, I would agree with that, because I've spoken with a lot of people, a lot of residents, and a lot of users of the community center, and many of them are just single users, or just the parents have memberships and they don't have family memberships. And I ask them why would just you belong and not have your kids in a family membership? And many of them have said, look, we'd love to use the pool, but the pool is too cool, it's too cold, it's too hard to navigate with all the use that's there. And they said, but if you had this other pool facility, we would definitely change our membership and make it a family membership. So I've really heard that from a lot of people. And
Yeah.
as a very avid user of the community center myself, my wife and I both use it on a daily basis. I see the number of people that are there, and I see the need for the facilities in terms of not only the pool but also the fitness areas. I mean, those studios are packed. Even we're there at 6 a.m. in the morning, and there's barely enough room for the people to fit into those studios as it is right now. So I can really see a benefit to having some more studio space, some more meeting space. I think it really gets a lot of use by the community, and I really see that it would be a big benefit to our users.
And as Victor alluded to, when we started diving into that second floor and the ability to look at facilities that are the fitness area and also the group fitness areas, there's really no more better cost-effective time to be able to do that, and no more better cost-effective way to be able to do that where we're already building that roof for the pool. Now it opens up some fairly cost-effective square footage to be able to take advantage of.
And I think the safety aspect of having a larger elevator to get gurneys and safety personnel, and not having people transporting those big large equipments like treadmills up and down the steps. I mean, to me that's it's a pretty dangerous situation, because that's a lot of turns going down those steps, and it's pretty steep, and it's a long set of steps. So I think we could save a lot of money if we don't end up in some kind of suit where we're paying someone to as a result of an accident going down those steps. So I think that's also a very smart thing. One last question for you, and that is in terms of optional items, and you've alluded to that and mentioned it a little bit. So we've talked about a few optional things like the slide and the spa, hot tub kinds of things. Will this design be done in such a way that we can easily parse those items out and a la carte pick and choose what we want to do? And I think you've kind of said that already, but I want to hear that again.
Yeah, and you brought up the spa piece too, which I think is another potential good example that we can fairly inexpensively draw it out and architecturally look at it in a way that it could come back as a potential alternate as well as the slide. I would want to spend some more time with both the HGA staff and our JM staff to look at, as we get into more of the bidding document situation and even in some of the architectural drawings, what are some of those things that lend themselves to be alternates that are easily separated out so that we can make some of those value decisions to either include or not at the time.
Right, I think that's important. I think it's also important for everyone to understand that, as you said, this is not the final approval. We're not seeking the final approval for this project. We're just getting the approval to move forward with the continuation of the design projects, the bidding documents, so that we really can go out and get true hard numbers from construction crews and teams that, here's really what it would cost. And then at that point, we really have the decision to make. Are we going to move forward with the project based on real cost estimates from real construction firms?
Very well said.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else?
Is there a motion?
I move to approve amending the scope and fees of the current professional services agreement with Hamill, Green and Abramson, Inc., HGA, to complete architectural design and bidding documents for Phase 1 and 2 of the Aquatics Addition project as identified on amended Exhibit A at a total amended cost not to exceed $639,150.
Second.
Any discussion?
Sorry, second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion passes. I'm really excited about this. This is long overdue, and I appreciate all the work of all the stakeholders that are involved in this, giving us ideas, helping us with financing, making sure that we have the best project we could possibly have, which does not mean the most expensive, fanciest project, but the project that will meet the needs of the people that are actually going to be using the facility. So
most efficiently.
Most efficiently, and I love all the energy saving aspects that have been incorporated into this project. So thank you so much for that. And I realize we're not approving the project, but we're getting one step closer.
Yep.
Anything else? Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.